So happy New Year's everyone. So today I'm gonna make a video about why is the game industry so woke for. It actually has quite a relevance to stuff like New Year's, coming to that later of course. But this is a question that I think people probably have a lot actually, right? Because we clearly see how the game industry, comic industry, mostly industry, are very, very crazy left-leaning, right? And I would say the IT general is just quite that. IT industry companies, Microsoft or whatever, right? Are all kinda, Marxistic, crazy left-leaning, right? Now, why is that, right? And honestly, I do feel I am the perfect candidate to explain this thing, right? So I've been in the game industry for about 15 or so years, IT industry 7 or so years, and I am a behavior scientist, mostly with behavior economy and game theory. So I work a lot with, what's in your brain, what are people thinking, what makes people tick or whatever. That's like my expertise. And I publish papers about, why do people play games or why do they buy certain stuff or whatever, right? So having basically lived my whole adult life maneuvering all these crazy loons, right, in the game industry, and then also having my academic understanding of behavior and why people do this stuff. I have a lot of stories, as I had in my last video, but also I have a lot of, I would say, understanding, right, the concept of why do they actually act like they do, right? So bring it down to here, guys. Let me subscribe, slap it over it. As you immediately, this will be a long video, and I want to address that just a little bit in my last video, which is just some of my, experience in the game industry. You don't have to watch the video before that, but whatever it is before that. But that video is very long as well, an hour or so. And people are complaining about that. But I want to address it here then, because when I make the video here, guys, my point is to give you, how to fish, right? And this is something actually a lot of my coworkers over the years has been irritated over me, right? Because I very rarely will I give someone a fish. You know what I mean? Very rarely do that. I much rather have someone oh, you have an issue with your Excel sheet? I will teach you the macro. I will teach you script, whatever, to fix that. Oh, you have issue with the code? I will teach you how to look for this bug or whatever. Yeah. I don't want to just fix it for you, right? I want to teach you how to fix it so you can do it yourself the next time, right? And this has certainly made a lot of my coworkers angry over the years, because a lot of people just want to have, just want to have the correct answer immediately, right? But this is not this channel, guys. It's never been my channel here on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, right? I'm here to hopefully give you the tools, rather, how to deal with these people, right? I made another video earlier this year where I explained how to deal with the dishonest left actions, right? How to deal with your lies or whatever. That's kind of where I'm referring to here, right? I'm thinking I want to give you the tools to understand this concept, why, right? How would more be who is woke or whatever. Here we're more about understanding why they act like they do, right? And I hope that you guys watch the video. You can then tell your friends or whatever, right, how to deal and act and understand these, mannerism or whatever, right? Rather than just giving you a very simplistic answer. And not to derail this video now then, but I am personally not a big fan, right, of most of these so-called anti-woke YouTubers. They will just read a tableau headline, tell you exactly what you already know, right? And to me, they're completely super boring. Completely pointless to me, right? You see one of them, you see all of them, right? It's not this video. But anyway, let's get started then. But as I said, we can have a lot of points. I've written them down before the debate. It's 8-9 different bullet points here. So the first one is the, this is the most objective point that no one is really going to be able to counter or argue, I guess. Other people get angry, blah, 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 what you do. But this is the most objective thing. So let's start with that, right? They call it from the beginning. So, IT industry and game industry is basically the same thing. However, the game industry is just way, way more extreme. The way you look at it is that, if you're a coder, right, a developer, typical developer in the IT industry or the game industry, you basically do the exact same thing, right? You must have code or whatever. This is also a main reason why a lot of people leave the game industry. Because working in the game industry is pretty bad, right? Bad salary, bad times, yada yada. And when you then leave the game industry and go to work at a normal IT company, you get a better salary, you get a better benefits, right? So it's no real purpose usually, because you like games, right? But the actual salary, life, whatever, free time and so on, it's just better, right? And what I mean is that generally here, the job you do is the same, right? For a lot of the roles, not necessarily for a game designer, and of course, coming to later, you have art, so forth, right? But as like a producer, a game developer, or a developer, or an QA engineering, whatever, a lot of these roles, right, are basically exactly the same in IT industry or the game industry. They're more or less the same job, right? Just that the IT actually pays way better, so it's like clearly. But anyway, I digress. My point is that the first point is that basically when you look at the game industry, it's just way crazier. So think about as this we do then, like left-leaning topics, whatever, right? Woke and so on, DEI, right? So in the IT industry, let's say you have like 10% of the employees being super woke or whatever. In the game industry, it's gonna be like 20%, right? It's gonna be way more. And this goes for everything, not just for like the woke stuff. If you have, let's say, 5% psychopaths in the IT industry, it's going to be 10% psychopaths in the game industry. The game industry is just way, way worse in every regard. All the extremities. It's just more extreme people in general. So everything I would say here about the game industry is also true for the IT industry. It's just the IT industry is like half or less than that. But it's like very, very similar. You just find more crazy people in every direction in the game industry. So that's the first point. That's how it is, okay? Like, seriously. Now, secondly, the big reason then why they are different, right? IT and the game industry is because, of course, in the game industry, you are developing some kind of artistic entertainment, right? And that means that a lot of people kind of fall off from that and rather use work with IT industry. So there are two main reasons they're different, right? The first is then that when you're working at a game, no one can tell you exactly, right, this would be a good or bad game. Where if you're making, say, like I don't know, a healthcare app or whatever, it's kind of clear that this kind of works, right? You know what I mean? So there's a big difference there. And even then, for the coders, right, usually you just follow whatever the site tells them, right? You get the script or whatever. But it's kind of like it's not exactly 0 1 binary. What is the actual result gonna be, right? It's much harder to tell, Another thing, of course, is that it's a lot of IT jobs where you kind of have, especially consulting, where you kind of have a goal. This is what costs the government wants to build like a healthcare app. They're paying $1 million, then it fits and it works, right? Where when you make video games, you don't really know how much you're gonna make the money, right? This goes true for making apps and so on as well. But video games are much more also in this like, oh, I don't really know. This might be a flop, this might be a success, right? It's much more up and down how much money you actually make per product. In the IT industry, it's also much easier to tell roughly how much money it will make, or actually have an exact kind of paid, money you make. That being said, of course, as a side note here, in the game industry, a lot of companies do work, as like contractors, right? And they do at, usually they port stuff. That's usually how it is. Today, you also find them in a lot of like gacha. They will do like some simple Facebook game or whatever. But mostly, at least historically wise, a lot of smaller indie companies will basically port stuff for the big companies, right? So then it is quite a direct salary payment thing. It's like you're gonna port our game to, let's say, Switch. It's a PS5 now, and you only port it. Like, don't design anything else, don't change anything else. Same, everything stays the same. You just code it over to Switch, right? And we give you $1 million. So that is very, very common. So, but we ignore that kind of job, right? The game industry is much more, I said, volatile, right? How it comes to how much money you make and so on. So that's one reason why it is just crazy, right? Because basically, imagine you are a software engineer, you got a master's degree from, I don't know, Harvard or whatever, and you got in the business, right? Where do you rather want to work? Do you want to work at a game company, where again, it goes like this, right? The salary and so on. Or do you go to like Microsoft and, have like a normal coding job, right? And the salary goes like that, right? It's very much more safer, right? So basically, it's an inherent natural thing that the crazy people will be in the game industry. I mean, honestly, that's how it is. Like, yeah, because think about it, you get less salary, but also the salary or the income, whatever, of the company is a lot more like that, right? Yeah, this is how it is. And what can I say? Yeah, I'm crazy myself. No, but it really is that. Why would you want to work in the industry? Because you get paid less and it's just way more volatile, right? But again, anyway, my point is that that's the first point here, why we get more crazy loons, right, in the game industry, just in general, you know, compare, like, again, not necessarily woke or incel, femicel, whatever, just in general, like, the more psychopaths, the more sociopaths, all of them are crazier, right? Because that's what you be there, right? In my own sense, then, if I have to be like, hopefully this is why I'm there, it's because I just love games, right? You know, I'd rather have a lower salary so I can do something I really, you know, I really want to build, right? I want to make this video game that I really, whatever, right? It's burning personality traits, something like that. But honestly, this kind of crazy, right? Because, like, why would I rather do that than just having way more money or something like that, right? And that being said, though, there's been on the video one day, perhaps. But what I have learned over the years is that while I really love games, there's also other jobs in the IT industry, which also might be really entertaining, right? And also might pay way more. Or is it IT, but generally engineering or whatever, or science. So for me personally, because I also love science, right? Like I said, I love behavior science. I love like just basic classical STEM subjects. I love physics and so on, right? So for me, and it's also like I can do anything in that sense, right? And so that's also why been back and forth between it, because like, well, I don't mind working at like a science place, right, and actually making more money. But I digress. But I'm pointing out that this is also, people, like I said earlier, they leave a lot, right, and it also makes it more volatile because everyone wants to work in the game industry, so you can pick up new people all the time. But also people leave quickly, right, because they get really tired of it. Again, the salary, the up and down, and so on, right. So again, this is the first point. This is like a very, again, factual point. It's how it is. And like I said, the S doesn't have anything really to do with the whole left versus right or politics, right? I'm just trying to explain to you guys that the game industry is very much, it's a crazy, volatile marketplace to work in, right? And that just makes it, just have a lot of crazy people, basically, regardless, right, of what they actually believe in. But just a big increase of crazy people compared to any other industry, really. And honestly, the closest industry is kind of, entertainment, like Hollywood, actors, whatever, right? Just a bunch of artsy people. It's kind of similar. And that brings me to the next point then, which of course is also art, right? So the next thing then that makes it different from the IT industry, and this is actually the biggest difference then, right, from a actual production standpoint, is that while the game industry has roughly half or so the same job as a normal like IT company will have, they also will have another 50% then of animators, graphical artists, concept artists, 3D model, whatever you call it, stuff like that, right? People that do more artistic stuff. And I guess game designer is somewhere in the middle here. So in the IT industry, you have UX designer, you have a CX designer, you have a bunch of different design of actual product, right? But in the game industry, you have the game designer. But the thing is that the game designer isn't. I never see the game designer myself as an artist. They're very, very different. Particularly because good game designers tend to come from the mathematical heavy point, right? Usually you want to hire a game designer who's very good at math, numbers, right? That's the biggest part of them, especially if it's a multiplayer game. So they tend to be very different than like the artist guys that are very, they want to draw some stuff or whatever. Yeah, like it's very, very different personality traits and different skill sets. And usually this is not a video, I suppose, but when it comes to game designers, they almost always need to have two skills, and I mean two roles rather. So they want to be game designers and also be an artist or a coder or whatever, right? So you need to have them do two things. It's almost impossible having a game designer only do game design at a company, unless if you're a really big AAA company. Every other company is going to have the game designer do different roles, because as a game designer, your like workload as design goes up and down a lot. So, for example, in the beginning, you have incredibly much stuff to do because you have to plan out everything in the game, right? And then usually the end is incredibly stuff to do. But in the middle of a development as a game designer, you actually have very little design to do. So you have to either code right, or some scripting, or maybe QA. Usually QA is kind of where most of them are, right? Testing stuff and so on. So you have to do something else, right? So it's like a side note, you never really want to hire game designers. But it's a big difference there between having like a designer artist, right, which some of them are, and a designer like engineer, right? And in my opinion, as I said earlier, but really put out here, you almost never want to have those like design artists. You want to have the design engineer, right? You want to have the mathematical design, the guy that can code and the game design. Those are much more valuable for a game company than a guy that are like kind of artsy artist guys. Yeah, because they have no actual practical skills, right? But I digress. But it's important to understand, if I bring it up, that this is the big difference, right, between IT and the game companies when it comes to just like the roles, right? So you have all these artist guys, and then you have the game designer, which tend to be kind of in the middle, and they can also be quite different than you have in the IT industry, right? Simply said, right? Simply said, most of the mental loons that you will find in the game industry are in the artistic place, right? The artist guys are the crazy guys. They're crazy, but that's honestly how it is, and maybe not surprising, but that's how it is. That's not coming to hear it. It's not HR. Actually not, even though yes, HR tend to also be more left-leaning and woke or whatever, because well, I guess practically you talk about that in the video, but obviously HR are basically almost all just females, right? Women, and women tend to be much more left-leaning than men, right? It's just a better thing, right? Men tend to vote right, women tend to vote left. So of course, if you have a whole department of only women, they will tend to be more left-leaning, and together they have some clustering and blah blah. So, but they tend to be more left-leaning. That's how it is. But the real crazy people you will find, in my experience, having been in the games for many years, are always in the artist department. They're the most crazy, annoying people to work with. I'm coming to that soon, even more details. But this is like, it's everything. Okay. So for example, this is a very short example in working here. I used to work at a game company, and I was the lead game designer, whatever. So that's my role. And I would arrive at the office very early, like 6 or 7, okay? Which is not super early, right? My father also like at 5 or whatever, yeah. But I would be there, early, right? Early, like 7, right? That's early, but it's not super early. 6 is like, that's super early. And who would then arrive after me, right? Who would arrive, after I arrived? And because I'm the first one there usually every day, it's easy for me to see who's coming in next, you know what I mean? So who would arrive? It's the coders, guys, it's engineers, right? Yeah, they will be there at around 7 2 and up to 8, right? Then we get all the coding guys, and then we get the producers and yada yada. You get my point. And then we have the Scrum stand-up meeting at 9:30, right? Who isn't there? The artist guys. Yeah, they haven't arrived yet. Yeah, who is late? It's always the kind of artist guys. Yeah. Now I worked in this company, and literally there was like 2 artist people, 2 of the game artists. They would never be on time, even for the kind of Scrum meeting, right? So when I'm coming there at like 7, this guy would arrive at like 10 or 11 or so on. I'm like, this is a freaking. Can we fire them, please? Yeah, like it's obviously you can say, oh, it's just one example, but this is how it is always. Seriously, like so, artist people tend to be, of course, more, liberal, not as serious, not as, interested in the stuff, right? And I am, of course, generalizing here massively, but honestly, what I explain to you now, I have told this story basically to everyone I know in the game industry and other companies, and everyone in the game industry has the exact same experience, that the artist people are, again, bad at holding times, bad at coming at the correct clock, bad at following the rules, bad because it's stuff like that too, stuff like that too. Like, who is the one that causes the most bugs? Usually the artist. Yeah, if the artists have access to, there's a good joke about that in New Game, the anime about making video games. Pretty good anime, I love it. Yeah, watch it out. So Aoshi, the main character, Aoba, she's an artist, right? She does some 3D modeling. And it doesn't work. She had all errors on the screen, right, in Unity or whatever she's using. And I think she's like in Unity, but it doesn't matter. Her game engine is causing all these errors, right, like in the bottom of the console. And her boss is like, why you keep doing this for? No, it's too hard. Yeah, but don't you see the console? It's like 55 errors. She's like, yeah, but I don't care about that. I'm not like a coder. She's like, yeah, but obviously you put the asset wrong, so it keeps throwing errors. She's like, how can I fix that? You have to fix it, you know what I mean? It's a joke about that, but I think that's actually a pretty perfect joke. So that's kind of how it is. Again, generalizing, but honestly, yeah, a lot of your work as a game developer is to help the game artists because they have no technical skills, and they also rather don't care about it. So they would be like, oh, I put my asset there. Okay, but you can't do that. You have to put in the correct thing, in the right skeleton, it has to be the right folder. You can't just put it there, right? Again, I keep saying I'm generalizing, but honestly, this is the experience that I've had for over a decade, and it's always the same thing. Every game company and everyone I talk to, other game companies have the exact same experience, that it's a lot of work having to work with these like more artistic, free spirit people, right? I'm generalizing, but they cause the most issues from a technical standpoint and so on. And basically, then again, compared to IT, right? Normal IT industry, you don't have those people at all, right? You don't have people. They don't they don't exist at like Google or whatever. Yeah, you don't have those jobs still. So that makes it way easier, right? Not having dividend at least. So there's always something, right? There's always something, but honestly, it is quite different. So that's the first thing. And lastly, like the basic industry, right? What is very important, coming out to the Vogue stuff more in details, is that because the market is very volatile, right? Because it's all this thing and the crazy and so on, people are also very afraid of getting fired, right? One main reason that the game industry is so woke, or rather like no one really like fights the woke, right, is because it's so easy to get fired in the game industry. It's incredibly easy in America especially, but even in other countries where firing is harder, it's very easy to get fired or get blacklisted and so forth, right? So because everyone is afraid of getting fired all the time in the game industry, you of course avoid drama and conflict, right, to some extent. And that makes it very easy, right, for the activists or whatever to push their agenda, right? Now again, this activist tends to be left, right, for the last 30 years. But in theory, you might have someone being super right-wing pushing their agenda in a company, and most people probably just won't do anything regardless, because again, they're very afraid of getting fired, they're very afraid of the conflicts at a bigger scale, right? So that also has to do with this whole volatility and the salary and all that stuff, right? And one thing that I've seen, especially when I was working at Blizzard many years ago, which irritated me a lot, was that people were very, very meek in general. So when I started working at Blizzard, a very common trope that I saw was that people around my position then had been there for several years, not getting a promotion, not getting more salary, whatever, really, because they were so afraid of doing anything, right? They were so just happy to be there. They were so just like, oh, I'm at the Blizzard, so I don't have to do anything more in life, And they took any chances, right? They took, not to fight people. They took no chances at anything. So I quickly rose in the ranks, right, in a few months, because I was hired, get into this role, and I quickly kind of, escaped these people in that bottom there, because I was like, I don't want to be this. Because every time the boss, I can do it, I can do it. They have no initiative because they're very meek. They're very, very contemplated on just being in the industry. So that's a very, very common issue. People in general, that you find some people in the gaming industry, they're just happy being in the bottom tier, not doing anything, not saying anything, nothing, any initiative, right? So obviously, again, then there is the control, right, for anyone, and I want to put that for anyone. I haven't even got to the Vogue topic yet. Yeah, I would say again for everyone, there is the control, right? Because they don't say anything against you. There is the control. But I quickly then rose in the ranks, because I was like, no, I want to do this stuff. I'll take initiative, blah blah, so forth. And this year to me are very, very boring, very meek, very They're like, oh, I exist. You're like, yeah, okay, great, yeah. Who wants to live a life just existing, right? So, I don't want to just be alive. I want to do something, right? And the same thing goes for, I think, any job. You just want to be there, right? That's super boring. Maybe I can understand it if you're fresh out of college, in your 20s, you don't want to be too much of a rascal the first year or whatever. But I'm talking people like in the 30s, 40s here. They've been there for 10 years, and they're stuck in the lowest positioning in the company because they are just completely, afraid of doing anything, right? But again, this goes in every direction, right? There is to control them in any direction, because they're just gonna, go with the flow, whatever, right? But it's very important to understand that. And then lastly, when it comes to this, like, I'll say it, the industry stuff that is in general here, is that you also have to think about that the game companies, right, are almost always in first world, right, in high industrial countries, right. We don't have many game companies in like poor developing countries, for obviously many reasons why. But getting into the topic, my point is just that because you have that kind of environment where most game companies are built in other already high existing IT industry companies like Silicon Valley and so on, right, you obviously will have a tendency towards the left as well, right? Towards progressive values, because this is how it is. People are more right-leaning and conservative, right, in poorer countries, right? So in progressive, richer countries, you're going to have more people being left-leaning, just generally speaking. and again, doesn't really like say that is wrong or bad or whatever. I'm just saying this is how it is. If you build your game studio in California, you're gonna have more left people, right? If you build your game studio in Texas, you're gonna have more people being right leaning, right? If you build your game studio in Florida, you're gonna have more people being right leaning. This is how it is, like absolutely obvious facts, right? And so if you take it in a global scale, that's clearly a reason why, right? And also for obvious reasons why, for example, games like Black Myth of Congo or whatever is quite different, and as a factor, right? Because this is built in China, they have a very different culture, right? So, I mean, of course, most game companies in the West, in Europe and in America, are basically always existing in a very close vicinity to other Vogue companies. And the game industry is very tiny, especially in the Dustborn video. Like, I know people that work on Dustborn, right? I know people in Norway and so on, because I'm half Norwegian. And it's just a lot of like everyone knows everyone, right? And it's very much just like, well, okay, yeah, like obviously you're gonna hire people that probably are left leaning if you make a game company where everyone else is kind of left leaning in an area, in a country where everyone is kind of progressive and left leaning, right? It's just how it is, based on how IT stuff has been for the last, I guess, 50, 60 years or so, right? I do think, though, as a side note here, they're changing a little bit, right? Especially in America, we see companies actually leaving California for many reasons, but for taxes, for new laws there, and so forth, right? And we see them building up their companies in other states like Texas, for example, and so on. I think we're all gonna see difference there, right? But as it's been for the last 50 years or whatever, almost every game company has been, almost all of them have been started in areas which are very, very like progressive in general, right? So I mean, obviously, like, and of course not everyone, but like 90% or whatever, right? Like whatever number you have, but you know what I mean. And then lastly, then in this last in this topic, these companies has of course also attracted people that they don't care how to say it about money, right? So you build your game company in like Silicon Valley, which is a very progressive area, right? And who will work for you? Well, to some extent, especially go back 20 years or so, 30 years ago, the people who will come and work for you in that company, right, are probably people that are more interested in making some arty stuff, right, than making money, right? Because imagine you're an engineer in California at the time, you can go and work at Google and Facebook and you can make a lot of money, right? But you go and work at like Riot Games instead or whatever, you go to work at Blizzard instead, you probably don't care that much about money, right? So again, you're less likely to be obviously right-wing then, you're more likely to be left-leaning, right? That's why you kind of went to a game company because you care about the artist dream or whatever, rather than going to the more, money-based companies in the same region, right? So they also kind of automatically attract those people in their own like bubble anyway, right? But this is kind of like the fundamentals here of how I say it, like the companies. Now we're gonna go into the behavior instead. Now it's gonna be more interesting, I would say. But I think I have to start up. I leave a couple of you guys think, but I think that first bit here was important just to kind of establish some of the basic fundamental inherent issues, so to speak, but or just in general, okay, people are more crazy, money, volatility, and so forth, right? And you can of course go into other parts as well. One thing, for example, is that volatility also means that there are less females. That also explains, why a lot of women leave the game industry very rapidly, because women have a much harder time dealing with the instability, right? And having to change jobs and so on. Like, I had an experience, and that I have to, in my experience, and I think in people's experience, you have to move state or country a lot, because when this game is finished, right, you have to get a new job at another game, because this company can't even, keep you for until the next game is starting to get further in and so on. So you have to move a lot, and women tend to move way less, right? So that's also a reason to why there are few females in general, but it also comes back to the Vogue stuff we come to now then, because a reason, right, where you have so much, Vogue, so to speak, one of the factors, of course, is because you want to have affirmative actions, right? Because women leave so rapidly in the game industry, they also want to hire them, forced basically get in here, even if you don't have any competence, right? Comment that more later. But I got a point. Like, that's also one reason why, because it's very hard to just keep people in general, but especially females, you know, it becomes like a little bit weirder, and you want to hire more females, right? Because everyone is leaving. But yeah. But anyway, now let's get into the more behavior stuff. There's no lamp here. I think sorted out pretty well, but now the sun is in. No, but and this is a few hours until sun goes down here, but it's just like there's some fog outside or whatever. Just turn on some lamps here. There we go. There we go. Good point, yeah, like turn on the lights. No, but I mean, it's not better, right? And because this is like, the sun shouldn't go down until like 4 or 5 hours from now. This is early morning here, but I'm just like, yeah, it's just completely white outside. This massive fog is not right. But anyway, take a shotgun. So now come my personal favorite subjects of why it's so woke, and it's honestly the biggest explanation of why it's so woke. This is so much a bigger factor than all this like I mean, honestly, I agree, of course, in general, that it exists a factor, which is that you have this black rock and evil companies that are paying money for them. That is a factor, certainly. But a much bigger factor, a factor that is like 100 times more important, is this factor, the misfit factor, okay? Game developers are social outcasts, okay? They are losers. No, they're misfits, okay? And it's very important to understand that the game developer, the psyche is of the misfit, right? They're different. They got bullied. I'll come to bullying later, it can be an whole point. But you have to understand that most game developers, especially back in the days, in the 80s and 90s, right, were very weird. They were playing D&D with a few friends they had, and they were bullied because they were good at math, and they watched anime. So that, for example, personally, right, when I grew up, you know, anime wasn't very popular, right? Anime today is incredibly popular. It's kind of weird for me almost, right? Because I grew up in that age where if you watch anime, you were a complete loser, right, you know? So I grew up in that. Where we had like no animes being aired, like sort of Sailor Moon and Pokemon TV, right? And you had to go and buy the VHS tapes from a special store, and you couldn't even buy the animes in my city where I grew up, right? You had to go to a bigger city and buy that had like one store in that city that had the VHS tapes. You know, that's kind of how I grew up. If you've seen Yuvashi Pedal, the basic anime, the main character, Unoda, he got on bikes to Tokyo, right, to buy anime stuff, you know, because he goes up in some rural. That's kind of how it was. You know, it's like one city you have to get your mom to drive you to, you have to bike there to buy your new anime VHS tape, right? That's kind of how I grew up, right? So, in those days, you obviously got merciless bullied, which I can come to later, but I mean, mostly you were obviously a misfit, you were an outcast, because who else would, get like on a bike to go and buy the latest Dragon Ball VHS tape, right? You know what I mean? It was kind of strange. And all the stuff too, that you would play these games, right? And this is before gaming was cool. And another thing was that you were playing, even in the gaming circles, you were a weirdo because you were playing those niche games, Final Fantasy. And so when I got bullied for playing Final Fantasy, that's how rare it was, you know what I mean? Because the few people that played games, right, they were playing Mario and they were playing Mario Kart, right? And they had maybe some other games like Contra or something. But I was playing my Japanese role-playing games like FF6 something. Thinking of, man, that was strange, you know, that people are like, that's like weird guy. He's really in for us in the gamers, right, you know. Anyway, my point, of course, is that, at least in my experience, and I think most people that are, you know, like kind of senior developers today, right, and CEOs or whatever, you know, senior production people, we all grew up in that environment, right, where you were a massive outcast, and you were very different, and you could be different for different reasons, right? For example, like I said earlier, I was different, right? Because I was like a perfect A student, right? This is bragging. This is a brag video now. But I had, good degrees, whatever, good test scores, all the stuff, A plus in all in math and science and even English, yeah, and so forth, right? To be fair though, the English I use in YouTube is very different than English I use at work, honestly. But anyway, I digress. But you get the point, right? So you were outcast, you were misfits. And it's very important to understand this psyche of the misfit, right? Now, of course, people are different, and I'm generalizing again here, right? But a massive reason, and this is arguably then, this is what I bring it up, right? The biggest reason why it's so woke in the game industry is because all these like senior developers today, right? Or then the younger developers back in the 90s, 80s, grew up in this like, oh, I'm the outcast and, no one likes me, I'm good at math and people hate me, so on, right? And when they then went into the game industry. So they're making games, right? They had this, burning, I want to make video games. It was all fine, right? But now then, 20 years later, it's very hard for these people, not for me for a second, but for a lot of them, it's very hard for them to interact and understand these, woke, whatever, the furries or this thing or this whole like trans debate or whatever, right? Because for them, they are thinking like, oh, I was a misfit because, I wasn't good at math and so on. So I have to be really nice to these like furry, hen pervert, person because they are different, just like I was. Right? But they really aren't. They're very, very different being an outcast because you were like a really good student and like anime or video games back in the 90s compared to being like some kind of furry PDF person, right? They're very, very different. But honestly, a lot of these misfits, they don't understand it, genuinely. They don't understand it. They can't understand that because for them, having all the childhood memories of being, oh, I'm the outcast, I'm the misfit, no one likes me, and because I am different, they just automatically accept all these like different ideas that the far loonies have read. And again, this goes in both directions. Now, of course, as I mentioned, the game industry mostly are left-leaning, right? But if they were super hardcore incel Nazis or whatever, they also probably would accept that. So, well, honestly, it goes both directions, right? They just have a very hard time not being nice and accepting of everyone that is, very, very different, right? Because they were different. But the thing is that, I keep saying here, these people, including myself then, I suppose, right? We are different as in, we were not in the norm, right? So if I have something... What do I have in the drawing here? It's supposed to be a lecture. I had the paper here. I like to do lectures. I need to... But I can't remove more. Okay. So imagine if this here is a center, right? This here is a norm people are. If normies are here, right, when I was a kid, I was here, right, I was here on my katana branded. I was like here, okay? This is where I was, right? And the misfits were back in the 90s or 80s. So. But today, right, you have people out here, right? They're crazy, they're insane, they're complete loons in so many ways. There are mental issues and all this stuff, right? And I'm not talking about, I'm just talking they actually are mentally insane, right? They're just crazy. But people, like I said, right, they can't grasp that. They're thinking like, well, I was here. This person also is here, right? No, they're over here, man. No, they're here, right? They can't handle that. So they cannot act like these people are as, outcast as they were. And it might sound like this is ridiculous, but no, honestly, this is probably the biggest reason why. Because I keep saying it, that the normal game developer person, they just can't, like, inherently, a lot of them just can't understand they're dealing with someone that is either mentally insane, like straight up actually mentally insane, or someone that is extremely, like, fanatically religious, for example. They can't deal with that because they think that is like, they're reasoning like, oh, everyone is saying this guy is like some kind of religious murder guy. It can't be true. He's just, like me, different, like they actually think like that, right? And that's why they have this incredible annoying, and this is why it's so annoying, to honestly, because having worked in the game industry, it is so annoying. So I will give you a good example here, okay? I will give you a good example. This is kind of a fun example, but I worked in the game industry, right? As I've hired a lot of people in my life, right? It's 100 people, I don't know. I hired a lot of people, right? I read a lot of resumes, okay? It's one thing. I read a lot of resumes, right? You know what I mean? So anyway, I'm sitting at work, right? And we get a bunch of new resumes to go over. Oh, we need to hire a new designer or a new artist or whatever, right? And a woman, this story's so stupid. So, this is so story, okay? This is what I mean. The game industry people are so misfits, and they have such a hard time understanding what is properly and not right. And they have this incredible like sympathy for weird people, right? Game developers, and they honestly have. I do too, honestly. That's probably why I'm too nice. I feel the people that write really weird comments to me on YouTube, or whatever, because I'm trying to like reason with them, whatever. But. So I'm at the office, right? When we get the new resumes of some new hires or potential hires, and there's one woman. She's basically dressed like a hentai Pikachu. She dressed in this like furry Pikachu, with showing her, And I'm just like, okay, reacted, right? I'm just like, why is she like half naked Pikachu woman? What is this thing? I can't hire her, even if she's a good game developer, game designer. She's gonna be obviously a HR issue. I'm like, nope, right? And then my two coworkers be like, oh, why did you remove that hentai Pikachu woman? I'm like, because she seems to be like a mental patient. She's like a pervert or something, at least. They're like, but come on, she's probably used, is that funny? Because she'd be like, no, she's like half naked in a weird, showing her tatas, and it's like really weird. Like, who would send the thing? She's obviously stupid. Like, who would send like an improper, who is like naked on their resume you send to a company? Like, this person obviously with issues. I'm gonna deal with issues. We're gonna hide this person, right? And these guys are like, no, she's a different outcast. She's a misfit, We should give her a chance. I'm like, no, we're not giving the hentai Pikachu woman a chance, okay? Like, no. I mean, this is an actual thing that happened to me. I'm like, no, we're not giving the woman to send herself like half naked on image to us as a resume. Like, oh, she hired me. Like, that's just like HR or what? You guys want to hire her so you can smash her, I guess? That honestly would be more reasonable if the guy next to me were like, yeah, we can fuck her because she's a slut, right? That'd be more reasonable, but that's not what they're thinking. Maybe they are, but honestly, no. These guys are thinking that, oh, she's like her Halloween costume or something. It's totally normal. Yeah, you don't there's an issue with it, no. They think it's like a funny, quirky Halloween costume. And I'm just like, no, she's like an OnlyFans worker or something at best. Honestly, I would understand them or relate to them more if they were like, yeah, easy, you can let's hire her. I probably can smash her. That would be more reasonable. But no, honestly, they're sitting there thinking that, no, she's just like a weirdo. We're all weirdos. Let's hire her. She's not a weirdo. And I'm just like, well, the word hentai means weirdo, I suppose. But I don't know, right? And I hope I have to break it down here, right? But basically, when you're sending a resume to someone, right? And you have an image of yourself, which I don't necessarily think is the best thing to do. I don't do that myself. But when I was like IT consultant for 5 years, and then we always had an image of the consult. And then of course it's me in some suit, it's me you see me in my suit, right? I got my Kenny Reeves look, kind of John Wick suit and so on. Black suit, black tie, black belt, black shoes, stuff like that, right? Yeah, something like that, Hitman resume. Yeah, I love it. No, that's my favorite suit. It looks like I'm a hitman, but I digress. I like something like that, professional, right? This is for the government, or this is for like a big Microsoft. Yeah, this guy that's the image you can have, right? When you're sending yourself with an image to game companies, honestly, no one wants to see you in your Pikachu suit, even if it was less, sexy, right? Or whatever, because it's not that interesting, because everyone is kind of like that, a geeky nerd. It's not that interesting. Like, if I say myself like this, oh, look at my anime post behind me, it's just like, it's just kind of cringe, like, everyone has that. Yeah, it doesn't really stick out, It has to be something really special, okay? It has to be like, for example, obviously I have, I don't know, let's say 200 anime figures, something like that. I don't know, I have a lot of figures. This is not even a few of them. If I had an image where I'm standing in my figure collection library, I'm like, yeah, something like that, then I would be like, okay, this guy's a real hardcore nerd. I kind of like it, yeah. But it has to be something that is extreme like that. Look at this, or look at all my video games I own or something, or look at all my katanas, but something like that, then I might buy it. But otherwise, it just kind of looks cringe if you're just presenting yourself as, look at me, I'm a quirky nerd, I have a Mario hat on me, something. That's in a lot of people that have the Mario hat. I'm just like, come on, it just looks cringe, man. Everyone has a Mario hat at home, come on, bro. Like, I have a Luigi hat over there, I have a Dragon Ball over there, Everyone has the freaking Dragon Ball 4-star, come on, this is like a low-level nerd stuff, okay? Do not be that guy. Never send an image of yourself as like level 1 nerd, okay? That has no value, it only makes you look stupid, honestly. But this woman then instead was like, oh, I'm gonna spice it up a bit. And, and now instead it's like, oh, this is a HR issue. I can't like hire her. She obviously is mentally insane, right? She's gonna have issues, and I assume her to be, aggressive and she's gonna fight with people, or she's gonna be an actual, like, super, sexual focused coworker that will sleep with half the coworker. It's caused a lot of drama, right? There's so many reasons why you can't hire her. But my misfit colleagues, right? They're just like, oh, she's just quirky like us. Like, no, no, she's too quirky. Yeah, like no, right? And they don't understand it. And I keep saying it. It's like a hurt issue there. It's kind of crazy, honestly. It's really weird. But anyway, I hope that explains kind of like the way I think about them as in misfits, right? Now, the next thing, of course, is bullying. Right? So the next point, bullying, being bullied, right? The very obvious reason, except just like I said, the game developers having grown up as usually being very outsiders, right, is of course that they've been bullied massively, right? Game developers, when they grow up, of course I'm generalizing, but let's be honest, all of them are nerds. So they get bullied a lot. These nerds, they get bullied, right? They got bullied, and because of the reason they have toxic positivity. If there's one reason why positivity is so massive in the game industry, it's because all these nerds, they grew up, right, being slapped around, punched, or worse stuff, right, because they're nerds and they deserve it, obviously. But but all jokes aside, right, that is the only massive reason why positivity is so big, right? So all these nerds, they grew up and everyone hated them, and they didn't have a girlfriend, and they got bullied by the hot girls, and the muscular guys in the football club threw balls at them, whatever, right? And everyone hated them in dodgeball, and yada yada yada. You get my point, yeah. Because they all grew up like that, they're so used, right, to being seen as the victim. That's one thing, of course, because the victim mentality obviously also is very woke, right? So this causes two issues, right? Constantly being bullied it means you are the victim, right? And certainly gamers tend to be bullied a lot in school and so on. And this is also one, I think, interesting reason why a lot of gamers, and so in Gamergate over 10 years ago, right, is that a lot of gamers actually are kind of like, strong against the woke issues, right? Because gamers are so used to being bullied, right? Gamers are used to being called incels or whatever, not because they actually are incels at all, not meaning in politically or whatever. It's because it's like that kind of mentality was very common, right? But when I was in teenage years, right, you weren't called incel, you were called a virgin or whatever. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff like that. It's very, very common to humiliate and bully the gamers, right? Growing up. So when Gamergate started, right, a lot of the gamers didn't care at all, right? They didn't get swayed by these like bullying attacks, right, from the left, right, and this is Keisha and so forth, right? Because again, they're so used to being bullied, right, by the common person around them, right, at school and so on, and probably even the parents, right? So when they get bullied on internet and so forth by these YouTubers, etc., they were like, yeah, shut up, what I mean? They kind of used to it, right? So that's the one massive reason why Gamergate was like this, gate actually, right, stopping the progressive left-leaning criticism, right? Because these gamers in the common life are so used to it that they weren't like affected by these idiots online, right? Honestly, I think it's a very interesting, it's a general personality trait there, absolutely. However, on the same time though, while a lot of gamers are very strongly against, like I said, right, these like lunatic left values, and I personally also probably are to some extent, even though my disdain for the left, so to speak, and I'm generalizing here, but my disdain is more from communism and Marxism, and my disdain, that could be its own video, but it comes more from, growing up in Sweden and Norway in general, right, is being very, very tired of the socialistic idea that everyone has to have always the same thing and this and that, and you should have freedom of speech, basically, and so on. My dislike comes much, much more deeper. It had nothing to do with video games, actually. Yeah, it comes more from like Soviet Union and all the deaths caused by Stalin and Mao Zedong and Pol Pot and so on. My disdain comes from a much deeper place, okay, than the video games, guys. And the reason I say it now, to some extent here, is because, as I mentioned earlier in the video, right, I want you to understand that, like I said, the fish thing and getting a fish, right, because the big issue that I see, right, with the woke stuff, right, is that, it's ruining my video games, or like we saw in the last Spider-Man trailer yesterday, oh no, Spider-Man is like black now, whatever. That's not my issue with it, right? Even though it's weird that everyone is black except Peter Parker. The issue I have with the left, right, in the extreme left that we see, right, is that I know what it leads to. That leads to genocide, like the left leaning, and of course saying that making everyone black Spider-Man won't kill anyone, I know, but my point is that kind of forced, because woke used to be called PC, right, and PC comes from the communist agenda of saying that either you agree with us or you don't agree, and then we kill you, basically, yeah. And for example, one of my all-time stars, like Pol Pot, right, Pol Pot killed everyone that didn't had glasses on them, right? If you actually learn about communism and what they've done in history, you would understand where I'm coming from, right? So for example, Pol Pot is usually my all-time favorite star, right? So Pol Pot was like, but if someone has glasses on them, they're like nerds, they're like smart, right? So we probably should exterminate everyone with glasses on them. Like, But that's actually how communism works, you know. And you might say that that's not what woke is, that's not what PC is, but that is exactly what PC is, right? PC comes from that idea that if you're either in the party or you're not in the party. You know what I mean? It comes from that idea, right? That you have to all have the same opinion, and you have to follow that line, right? And again, woke, of course, is just another word for PC, right? Or DI or bridge or whatever, right? They all have the same kind of conclusion idea that everyone has to conform into the general idea, right? Freedom of speech, something they are against, right? They are against stuff and so forth, right? So, no, that's where I come from, much more, right, than seeing the stuff. And for example, forced speech, right? You have to call something Y instead of X something. That's crazy, right? And that doesn't mean that I'm against, for example, trans rights. I think it's kind of funny because I always been very pro trans rights and gay marriage and so on. When I was a kid, I got bullied. Talking bullying here, back to bullying. See, this video is good, yeah. When I was a kid, I got bullied heavily because I was very pro trans rights and gay rights. Think about that. When I was like 12, 13, I got bullied at high school because we went to a museum, was basically like an LGBTQ museum, about LGBTQ people that died and so on in World War II. Right? Remember, I'm from Europe, so we went to Auschwitz and so on as well. In my high school, or junior high school, they usually would take all the 9th graders and go to Auschwitz. That's like a common trip from my school. It's a very common in Sweden. So, I'm kind of from that region, right? Where we talk a lot about World War II people and so on. You know what I mean? So anyway, we went to a museum about basically people that got, in trouble because they were LGBTQ then, right? Back during World War II and, roughly those ages between the world and so on. After that, we were going to debate that and so on at school. And I took the stance of, yeah, of course, if you're gay, lesbian, whatever, I don't care what you do in your bedroom and so on, right? Yuri, yaoi, whatever. If you see my anime stuff, I like yaoi, so whatever, right? Like, it's now, yeah. Who's like, yaoi, yeah, like, oh, yeah. But point. I was also afraid of that. So I got bullied for that, bullying, this guy is weird, he likes yaoi stuff or yuri stuff, whatever, right? But, that is interesting, I think, because basically, the people that were bullying me 20 years ago, right, or whatever, 30 years ago, they would today be much, much more, so to speak, progressive than I was, right? And I think the whole conceptual idea that a lot of people bring up, right, that it feels like I was left, but then the left ran away from me, and the left just kept going forever in that direction. I was like, well, what happened? I think that I think is my experience. I think a lot of people's experience, right? Where like I tend, because like when I was like 12 or something, I was probably the most left-leaning person in my class, like seriously, like the most left-leaning. UBI and all this stuff, UBI, trans rights, gay rights, all this stuff. And now I'm just like, those people are crazy. Yeah, like what happened to people? The kids kept moving. And now my classmates, as grown-ups, like I talk to them now, they're gonna have way more, left-leaning values than I have, right? Of course, I see that because they're brain dead. Yeah, they don't have any own opinions. They just follow whatever the status quo is. So they just follow whatever political correct things to be currently, right? And that's also, for example, Sweden, right? Sweden is incredibly like that. It swings a lot in one direction. Sweden is very known for that as a culture. So either everyone is on X or everyone is on Y, right? So, for example, Sweden is kind of fun in that sense because, or fun or scary funny. Because, for example, immigration, right? Sweden was very pro-immigration for like 20 years, and now everyone basically is very anti-immigration, right? Now, not just the party that is against it. No, basically everyone, even the left is like, I'm anti too. So Sweden is very much like that. Everyone is it's like culture, right? Either everyone thinks it's like this, right? Or either everyone thinks it's like that. It always goes like completely one other direction, right? Swedes are very much like that. This kind of come back to what I said earlier, where my disdain, so to speak, for the left comes more from that, right? This socialistic country I grew up in. Sweden, Norway has a lot of socialistic ideas, right? And that's kind of where it comes from. It's not very individualistic. It's very much like either we all do that or we all do that, right? And it's a very, very close, of course, to stuff, for example, Pol Pot or Stalin or whatever, right? Because there's a lot of overlap there. But I digress. Back to bullying. It's a long video, I said, guys. But I also hope you guys liked it, because I'm trying to kind of connect all the dots together here, right? Because the game developers were so bullied when they were children, right? They obviously, like I said, has created this issue, right, of both toxic positivity, because they can't handle, being mean to other people, right? But they also have caused them to become this, like I keep talking, this pendulum swing, right? They also have become like that because, they were bullied, they were outsiders, and combined with the misfits. So they're very much in like one group, right? And then have a very hard time saying no to, again, whatever is the current status quo is, right? So what I'm explaining here, I suppose, is what's called being an ally, right? I think that's something that these bullied, misfit guys have also in common, right? They become these allies. They become very focused on, oh, I don't want to be on the wrong side of this thing, right? Yeah, so they become very focused on, we're side, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. So they kind of jump into, right, whatever it's supposed to be. So a lot of these, like, feminist allies and so on, right, usually are bullied victims, right? And they're very meek, like I talked about earlier, and then they will pretend, right, to believe in whatever. And that's usually kind of why I think, especially because of male feminists, right, they kind of, oh, yes, honey, yes, of course I agree with it, are seen as the most pathetic men, right, of all of them, basically, because everyone knows they're just pretending to be that so they can hopefully get laid with the feminist woman, right? And they just have this incredible, like, little personality traits, so they just agree with whatever their wife or their girlfriend says, right? And I hope it's where they're coming from, because these people are then very bullied, right? They're introverted usually, not always, but usually introverted, and they have no real opinion of themselves, right? And as an example, I know this woman that I went to school with. Her husband is perfectly like this thing, and he's a incredible, pathetic person. I don't care if he watches the video. She also hates her anyway, and so I am actually the word friends is taken here, but my old classmate from high school, she actually is one of the leading figures in the feminist initiative in Sweden. So she's basically like the second or third highest now of that party in the whole country, and she's like the mayor of my hometown or something, basically, or not mayor then, but like elderman or whatever title is in Swedish, but whatever. So she is like a politician, right? And she's just crazy left leaning, right? And she also hates her, and she hates me, whatever. So if she watches this video, she probably never will, but whatever. But it's kind of fun as a side note, because obviously she hates me because she always lost in debate against me, right? Because she's always been a crazy person, obviously. I've known her for like 20 years. Before she turned into politics. And she's a crazy person, right? But obviously she can't argue for a second. She goes on, how I say it, it's like my grandma always said, left people you can't argue with them, because they don't actually have any facts. They just have faith, right? Yeah, they just have faith. For them, being left-leaning is part of a religion. It's not part of actually, understanding reality, right? So we would debate in school, like in high school, and she lost to me every time. And I'm not saying it to brag, but no, but literally, because she can't argue, And obviously, I would say that, oh, so you're before communism. What about Pol Pot? What about Stalin? She's like, oh, well, that wasn't real communism, you know what I mean? So she couldn't argue that. She hates me mostly because I made a fool of her every time, right, at school, like over and over again, yeah. So that was fun. But anyway, so no surprise then, right? She got married eventually. Not that long ago, like 5 years ago. And her husband is probably the most pathetic, simp guy ever seen in my life, right? He has like no personality, and all of my other friends that met him, you always make fun of him. It's not like I'm mean now. No, but seriously, because this guy, right, he's married to one of the leading feminists in Sweden, right? So you can imagine how he is as a person. He has no personality. He doesn't exist, right? He only does what his wife tells him to do. Maybe he's into that. Maybe he's super happy. I don't know. He looks incredibly unhappy though. But maybe he's like into it. He's like, yeah, I'm your slave mistress. Maybe that's it, but that isn't actually. He's just like some super male feminist guy because the most like super plain outfit. He never says anything. Has no opinion on anything except exactly like his wife has, right? If you talk to him alone, he basically won't talk to you back. So I tried to talk to this guy a few years ago, right? Meeting him in my hometown and so on. And I'm just like, just like, hello, yeah. He's like, I'm like, yeah, so you're her wife, her husband, He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, so how? He's like, what should I, dear, what should I say? You know, literally that guy. Like he was afraid of talking to people without his wife giving him what he could say and couldn't say and so on, right? So he's obviously like the most extreme example I have met in my life of that, like, you know, male feminist guy. But he really put all, and he looks exactly expected. He has glasses, short brown hair, the curly brown hair. He looks exactly also like you expect. He looks exactly like the stereotype in the movies and the Simpsons and whatever and so on too. So it's really hilarious too, because he looks exactly what you expect him to look as well. But you know, he's very, very, how say it? He has zero muscles, right? There's no, you know, muscle on his body. No, but seriously, the typical male feminist, right, looks like him because they is very much like just, I just live in the background, as my wife says, right? So this guy he's very, very just unreal almost, right? He has no muscles, but he also doesn't really put out any clothing. He's very like white. Like, it's hard to explain it, but you know what I mean when you see these people. Like they have like basically they're like a ghost, you know. He's like a ghost, yeah. He basically exists in his wife's background to like give her food or something, like give her a hand and so on. And of course, when they have a kid, then of course when the kid was born, he was the one taking off work instead of her. Now in Sweden there is a law, so you have days you can like move around and so on. Sweden has like father leave as well, paternity leave. But still, though, he's the one doing it immediately. So I'm laughing at it. I shouldn't be that guy, okay? Like my uncle, he did the same thing too. So no. I'm not saying you can't be a good dad and so on, but it just felt like so stereotypical that he, of course, has to stay at home and she has to have a career and so on. Yeah, like it just felt like so stereotypical that he was the one that is a stay-at-home dad and so on. But anyway, that kind of concludes bullying because, like I said, these people can't handle it. And they will often turn into these, doormats, right? And if you think about it, right, in a general sense, that's also why I said earlier, you have to think about it as in factors, right? You combine the factor of, like, you know, I'm afraid of getting fired, right? Remember the factor of volatile market, right? Which is very true. So which is again, I've used that factor thing. So you have that factor of like, I might get fired if I do anything wrong, right? Okay, you know, and then you combine that with men that are very afraid, and they never had a girlfriend ever, and all this stuff, right? And then they use like, yes, dear, kind of thing. So you have like a double essence of like being afraid, you know, and hiding in the corner. You have that in spades, right? So it's that's why I want to make the video like I do right now as well, because I want to go over all the different factors, right? Because every time that I read about this topic, when I see people trying to explain this topic, right, why is the gaming industry so vogue, actually, I feel that they usually use touch on one or two factors, but it's like 10 different factors. Yeah, you have to combine them all together, right? But for example, then, you know, bullying simp guys, right? However, that brings us then to the next general point, which my mouth is tired, but whatever. No social skills. No skills at all in social life. But seriously, this comes back to what I said earlier, right? That to me, this does feel like a little bit of a New Year's Eve video. Had to say it, New Year's. No, but seriously, all jokes aside, game developers, I'm generalizing here, but they have a bit of a sad life, right? Especially growing up. Most gamer geeks, right, so forth, you know, and this is just honest truth, right, aren't invited, right, to that New Year's Eve party, right? They aren't invited to the hot girls' midsummer party or whatever, right? They don't get to score with the cheerleader or whatever, right? That's the miserable truth, right, you know, and let's just be frank here, of course, not me then, but everyone else. No, but like, that's the frank truth, right? Today then is New Year's Eve. It's early here in the morning, and I've been playing some Street Fighter when I woke up, right, with my old made stick, and then I did some katana. I played Street Fighter, and then I made a video here, guys. But I actually have a party to go to because I'm cool. No, but all jokes aside, it gets better if you're watching the video now. You're like 15-year guy thinking that, this is me. I am not invited to a party or whatever. It gets better, right? You know, I'm an adult now. I have actual adult friends, and we have parties actually to go to. Hopefully, it gets better. Yeah. No, but it gets better. It absolutely gets better when you're an adult. You have everything from a company parties, right? You have friends parties. Like honestly, I'm kind of tired because this is the last week I had so many parties, right? at the family parties, and then on the family party, then Christmas party with all some friends, and some more Christmas party. I'm honestly tired. I barely want to go out today because I've been at like 5 parties last week and travel, back and forth as well. Yeah, so I'm almost like, ugh. But yeah, it's New Year's Eve, so I guess. But honestly, right? But the truth is that most, of course, game developers really grow up not really being invited to these different social events, right? That's just a fact. Of course, it's always I'm generalizing from the behavior standpoint here, but when it comes to how people act, right? Most people actually, and this is actually true for everyone, more or less. Most people actually are really bad when it comes to social skills, right? Like behavior or pattern and so on. Most people actually really suck at it, like straight up. And even if I sit there at college, like for example, I used to give a course. This is before Corona, like 6 years ago. I used to give a course then as a lecturer, as a professor. I used to give a course in just like behavioral science, like basic behavioral science for like new, college fresh student basically, like 18, 19-year-old kids, right? And telling them, okay, this is how it works. This is why we make products, blah blah blah, so forth, right? And while that course is focused on actual, more like practical skills when it comes to like how to develop different, items, like actual products, like apps, games, whatever, right? Reasoning, how people think. It also gives a general idea of like how do you actually like analyze people's behaviors, or I suppose I have to give the students that skill to some extent, right? And what you see then, these are, supposedly, some kind of sample size of, 18, 19, maybe 20-year-olds, people in the country, right? And they are mostly terrible at it, like straight up. Not the nerds, not the geeks. I mean, it's been people in general here are pretty bad at it, actually. It's actually kind of funny, I think. It's not funny, but it is kind of funny. I think that a lot of people, when you grow up in high school or junior high school or so, right, and you're bullied by the cheerleader or the jock or whatever, right? Oh, you can't have friends, so on, right? But they aren't good friends either. You know what I mean? It's not like the cheerleader, the queen cheerleader. She doesn't really have good friendship either. She probably has a bad relationship with her parents, right? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, she sucks too, but kinda, yeah. Most people at age are pretty bad at social skills, right? And my point is that you have to train that, right? You have to train that. You have to train friendship. You have to train romance, relationships in general. Almost no one, right, gets married and stays with the same spouse the whole life, right? And they meet in high school or whatever. How often do you have someone that started dating the girlfriend when they were like 14 or something, and they're still married at 40? That is incredibly rare, incredibly common, right? I'm not saying that every marriage ends with divorce, not at all. I'm just saying that it's a very clear statistic, obviously, statistics, that the later you get married in life, the less you get divorced, right? The earlier you get married, the more you really get divorced. Right? The likelihood of getting divorced obviously increases the younger you are to get married. Like, it's super obvious. Like, you can look at that data for that, but it's obviously how it is. Do you even have to Google that? Like, of course it is, right? Because if you get married when you're, very young, you don't know much about life, right? You're gonna fight about stuff. You're making kids early. You know who handle that, and then While if you get married when you're like 40, 50s, and you've never been married before, that means you have waited for a person you can really trust or whatever, so on, right? So you probably will be married the rest of your life, right? It's very obvious, but like I said, right, you have to train these skills, right? You have to train them, right? So coming back then to the whole newest party today, right? Unfortunately, again, right, the common game developer hasn't been invited to, the New Year party when they were 16 or 15 or whatever, right? So they're very inept. They're very, very inept in social behavior, right? And like I said, when I have these courses for 18, 19-year-old in that age group, I see that most of them are very inept, right? And this also, again, includes the cheerleader or whatever. So I'm trying to teach her, like, oh yeah, but you have to like understand empathy, have to reason, have to, analyze people's behaviors or whatnot in a more deep way. They're saying ugly or fat or whatever, but more actually understand people. And they struggle with that massively. Sorry. So it is a very common thing, again, that you have to really, really train on this thing, right? And what I'm commenting on, of course, is that a massive reason why the game industry is so vocal, whatever you call it, right, is because the game developers has never actually trained in skills when it comes to sociality or anything like that, because they didn't get invited, they didn't have any friends, and this goes the whole life, right? So now they're like 25 or something, and they basically have the skill of like a 5-year-old, maybe a little older, but 5, 10 or something. They have like a very, very limited scope of social skills, right? Those people are really gonna be easy to manipulate, easy to be sick, right? And they will have really weird opinion about stuff. And again, earlier, the extremity of game developers, right? They're either psychopaths or sociopaths or they're provoke, right? And all of them are very common, right? Because what it leads to having no skills, right? Social skills usually means you're very extreme in something, right? You know, you're very extreme left or very extreme right or up and down, whatever. But tend to be extreme, right? Tend to be extreme, and it's so obvious, right? It's so obvious. I worked at many different companies in my life now, you know, and it's always like there's always so many people in the game industry that really have no social skills, like crazy low skills. I know it sounds repetitive, sorry, but my point is that you see, I think honestly, I think it's hard to understand how low the skills are. Like you want to, I mean, many of my stories, right, that I can tell you about my industry experience usually comes from people just having absolutely no social abilities whatsoever, right? And it sounds like so stupid sometimes that people doesn't even believe that it's true, right? Like no one said, but no, they are like that, yeah. And it's kind of funny then. If I just gonna be a little bit my personal stuff here now, I think it's kind of funny because of course a lot of people ask me when I tell them these stories or whatever, right? How can you then, me as a person, be the normal one? Yeah, I'm the normal one. I'm the normal one, guys. I'm the normal one, guys. Yeah, see, that's good. I'm normal. No, but seriously, I think it is. The reason I think, honestly, that I'm the normal one. There are two reasons why. Okay, first of all, for many practical reasons, I was, bullied or whatever, right? But I had a very particular personality trait or role perhaps at school, where I was bullied massively. No one was bullied as much as I was at high school, in my high school. I mean, not in the world, but I mean in my high school. But I was bullied very weirdly because I was actually very good at sports, right? And I knew all the jocks, so I was actually like friends with all the football guys and the hockey guys and so on, right? So I was actually a jock, but also a gamer and anime nerd, and so forth, and Marvel and so on, right? So I was in this weird positioning where I was bullied massively by the teachers, a lot as well, but most of them, when it comes to students, I was bullied by everyone that wasn't in the popular group. You know what I mean? Like I had this really weird positioning, like I said, right, where I was actually friends with the popular jock guys and the cheerleaders. I was friends with them basically, but everyone else hated me, right? And because I was, for them then, this odd ducky guy, like, but he's like a nerd. He had good grades, and he's like friends with the jock guys. He's a quarterback. What doesn't make any sense, right? So I get bullied by everyone else, merciless, because they hated me for so many reasons, right? Probably for the jealousy, honestly, right? But so I had this honestly, really, I think, kind of almost, I wasn't unique, but definitely kind of a weird growing up experience where it's like, oh, my only friends are actually the most popular guys and also the least popular guys, right? Because then I'm also friends with, again, these misfit, outcast gamer nerds, right? So a few of course in the school liked me, of the non-popular kids, right? I was friends with the least popular kids, the chess club basically, right? And also friends with the football guys, and everyone else between that hates me, right? Yeah. So I had a really weird positioning, and I did then. Long story short, the point is that this could be an old video course. Long story short is that I got invited actually to those parties, the newest parties and so on. And not every party ever, but I actually did get invited because I was friends with the popular guys, which is strange, yeah, which is a weird, upbringing in that sense, right? And I played a lot of sports, and I was kind of a quarterback and so on, so it was very weird. But I think that, end of the day, right, when it comes to that stuff, basically I'm very skilled at, like, every sport. This is a brag video. No, but seriously, there's never been a sport that I've done that I was bad at. I was always like pretty good at every sport we had at school. So I was like the volleyball champion. I was the captain of the volleyball team. We won that. I was a bandy champion. Won that. So baseball champion, won that as well. So it was just like I was good at every sports, right? So I have the kind of like very, very maybe it's just good eye coordination I don't know, but I'm just good at all that ball sports. Like I'm extremely like just, but put out though, I was never the best usually at some sports. It was like I was like second best, very jack of all trades generally in sports. But my point anyway. Now I derailed the video. My point is that I had this weird like bullying, but not. I was like infamous rather than that, right? And then I was in a lot of fights, of course, yeah. And I grew up being in a lot of fights, which also should be on the video. But yeah, I grew up having street fight all the time, right? Against people. I hate bullying, right? So every time someone else got bullied, I will run in there and help them and so on, right? Usually, so then I will be fighting the guy. They were fighting some other guy and so on, right? So I got into a lot of fights. So I had a very weird positioning when I was like very popular among some people, hated by others, and had a lot of enemies. It was strange life. But I think it gave me a little bit of the comment put it. My skills then became a lot of chameleon, right? Because I was hanging out with the most popular kids and the least popular kids, and then also some people liked me because I helped them in a fight, something like that. So I also friends with a lot of the immigrants likes me, the immigrant kind of gang guys liked me because I usually, when I was growing up, most fights I had, right, were with like rednecks. They were like racist and so on. So I would fight them, to help some immigrant guys and so on, right. So I kind of learned to go around many different kind of groups and so on. So that's one thing. And then generally, I also had a knack for the whole analyzation behavior, so on, right, which I then of course studied at grad school, and then I started studying my PhD and so on, right? Even before that, I felt that this is a topic that I really like, right? So I felt that I always was analyzing it. So even if I was similar to these misfits, I could analyze and say, okay, I understand why. But anyway, long life story shortly. But I want to point it out that it's bad using yourself as an example, obviously. But I think that it would be very easy for me to also fall into this category of just like no social skill, bullied victim guy. I think that was probably very close becoming that, I said, right? Because I also was, of course, very bullied. I could also very easily sit here and have a very like victim mentality, right? Because I got bullied a lot, people fought me a lot, I got burned, I got stabbed, so I could sit here and, oh, my life sucks, and it was so unfair. First day of 9th grade, a guy come up and stabbed me, or whatever. I could sit here and do all that stuff and be like, oh, my life sucks, right? It's very easy there, but my personality isn't that at all, right? But I can see how it's easy to get into that positioning in your mentality and just either blame other stuff or stuff like that, whatever. Oh, this happened to me and it's so unfair or whatever. But this isn't how I work as a person. But it would be easy for someone to have my life experience growing up, falling into this category, I think, certainly. Absolutely. But anyway, I think that the general person, though, that are game developers, especially back in the days, they do end up in this, unfortunately, life where they don't have much experience, right? And like I said, you have to train this. Even the popular kids, so to speak, suck at this as well, right? And then they do have more experience, though, so they become better at it, right? And but even they are pretty bad at it when they're 18, 19, and so on. But it's just kind of like how it is, right? They end up in this position. However, what does this lead to then? Well, it leads to a lot of issues, right? I mean, obviously issues like having no social skills, but it leads to a lot of issues. So the big issue that I always found with this thing is that a lot of the HR issues that you read about, right? Oh, Blizzard or sexist and this thing and that thing, right? Since I worked at Blizzard, for example, when I read about that, I didn't work there anymore. When I read about all the the issues with the company, right? I was like, yeah, obviously. I was like, yeah, is it news? Everyone knows that. The thing is that, and it's something I haven't even said yet, but I put out here. So I should have said earlier. I really should have said earlier. Sorry. Is that what I'm referring to are both men and women. You know what I mean? I didn't say men before, right? Even though obviously men happens to more, but they're also women, right? So social skills is true for both genders or people that are trans or whatever, non-binary, even more probably than those people. It's like the lack of skills in this department is very true for everyone, okay? So what happens, of course, is that the most of these stories you read about, with these weird, like, sex stories or whatever, right, or misunderstandings and so forth, at Blizzard and companies, are usually because you have a guy with no skills, and you have a woman that also has no skills, and they're trying to interact, and they can't interact because they're both idiots, right? It's like two 5-year-olds interacting, but they're in grown-up bodies, right? You have to imagine basically it's like two 35-year-olds, so to speak, but they're both like 4 or 5 mentally, right? And they're trying to interact with each other. It's gonna fail, right? So it's massively an issue, because I think a lot of the HR issues happens because both men and women that are game developers just cannot, deal with other people. Yeah, the women has never had a boyfriend. They never were popular. They didn't have any friends growing up, right? They also can't handle the whole male stuff, right? And the male guy never had a girlfriend, never had, love, never had, intercourse with her. And he's trying to flirt with this girl or whatever because he thinks that she likes him, because she can communicate either. She said something really weird to him, and he thinks that he's flirting with her, so he kisses her, she slaps him, whatever. And these issues, right, are very, very common in the game industry, because honestly, both genders, right, the women cannot communicate either, the game developers, because they also suck at it, right? With the sex issues, why? So they cannot communicate, and they will say a lot of weird stuff, right? I have so many stories of female, I work with, where I'm like, oh my god, this woman is crazy, yeah. Like step I mentioned earlier, Pikachu lady. I was like, oh yeah, this woman is obviously insane, right? I have so many stories of like really weird female coworkers, which I mean, like, man, this woman is weird, and I'm not meaning weird in the nice hen weird. I mean, like, oh, this is weird. Why is she saying? Yeah, like very, very weird interactions. For example, one woman I worked with, she would constantly have these temper tantrums. Right? I mean, if she didn't get her will, she would start screaming and throwing stuff, and she would have literal temper tantrums, which is usually called what's it called again? Schizophrenic personality disorder. I can never pronounce the word correctly. Histrionic. But anyway, it's a personality disorder that women have more than men, and basically it's a very juvenile personality disorder. When you're very narcissistic, focus on yourself, and if you get critique and so on, you will escape it by temper tantruming. So, for example, if you try to critique her, she will say, "Oh, you say that because I'm a woman. I hate you. You're a race." You should throw stuff at you and run in her office. For example, right? She will avoid having to ever take blame. And one thing is very common in this mental behavior, histrionic behavior, is that they will always blame you for for not fixing their issue. So, for example, it's very, very childlike. So, for example, this personality disorder is like a kid. So, here's an example. So let's say a kid, right, eats cookies, right, before lunch or dinner or whatever, right? So he goes into the kitchen and he steals the cookie jar, right, and he eats cookies, right? And then mom is like, "What are you cookies for? You're supposed to wait for after lunch, I told you before." And the kid, right, instead of saying that, "Oh, I'm sorry, mom, I should have done that," or, "Oh, F you, mom," right? And it's 50, they're like, "F you, mom," yeah, like something like that, right? What a lot of kids do, right, is they blame the parent. A lot of kids do instead is say that, "Well, mom, it's your fault. You should have hidden the cookie jar. You should have hid it better, right? It's your fault for allowing me to steal the jar with cookies, right?" My coworker, she has the same personality trait than with his Hispanic personality disorder, where she will be like, if she destroys something at the office, right? So if she ruins something at the office, he takes your lamp and throws it on the ground, right? And it breaks your lamp, you know what I mean? Throws it on the ground. And you say, "Why are you throwing the lamp on the ground for? You could just destroy my lamp." She'll be like, "Oh, it's your fault." I mean, it's my fault. "You should have stopped me before I threw it in the ground." It's like, no, you should have just not done it. It's your fault, Like that kind of mentality, right? That I think is the most perfect example of this personality disorder, where they will always blame everyone else except themselves. They will never take any accountability. But it's very, very common, and it's very, very similar to this like children mentality, saying, "Oh, it's your fault, you didn't stop me," right? And that's why you should call it a very juvenile personality disorder. But anyway, that's an example of a coworker had, where she's just like, she will use temper tantrum through everything, and then if you try to critique her temper tantrum, she will be like, "Well, it's your fault. You made me angry. I'm not temper tantruming. I'm not irrational. You made me irrational. I mean, it's your fault. That kind of behavior. Right? If you try to like say to them, "Oh, calm down. What are you doing? It's your fault. I'm angry." I mean, that kind of never take accountability, right? So this is not a male issue actually at all. It's both issues. Of course, it is more common that male have this social lack skills, absolutely, because they're more male in the gaming industry, and men tend to be bullied more in that sense. Women might be outcast, but it's a different thing, right? So men tend to have it more, obviously more likely that men has it. But again, I always put out that in my experience, right, you will have this like temper tantrum juvenile woman, and you have this like completely antisocial guy that has no friends in his whole life, right? And they're trying to interact. They might even like each other actually, but they can't interact. She gets angry, he said something wrong, and she said something wrong word, and it's just all mishaps, right? And I just put out here, I'm not saying that you don't have actual incidents or actual crime happening of people getting armed or whatever. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm not saying that someone needs to go up and grab someone, by the or whatever. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. I'm just saying that a lot of these weird interactions you hear about, it's just because everyone, 2 or more people that are involved, all just really suck at this thing, so they can't just communicate, right? And honestly, in some guys' defense I worked with, where they get into HR issues, not getting fired or something, minor issues, right? Usually, I think it is because the women lead them on, right, in a really weird way, because the women, again, can't communicate, so they will say some really weird stuff to them, and as the guys, they're like, is she flirting with me? I think she's, yeah. They genuinely think she's flirting with them, because she cannot actually communicate in a proper way. It's actually very common, honestly, and this don't blame the women for it. I mean, they're both. The guy should have the intelligence to understand she isn't, right? But she also shouldn't just say it like that. So they're both in the wrong there, and it's very common. It's super annoying, and just generally, no one can really handle criticism at all with this thing. It's really crazy. I'll give you one example. I remember thinking about earlier. This is pretty funny. I'll give you an example of no soft skills. So I had a coworker, okay, obviously, a lot of the stories is with I had a coworker. No, but it was me. No, but so we had a new guy. I might have told the story in our video. That's funny, I think. This is a funny, dumb story. So I had a new guy starting on this day, right? So we had hired a new guy. He's fresh out of college. He's like 22 or something, but whatever. He's like his first day at the office, right? Now, he has a really weird spelling on his name. Like, straight up. And I admit that. I admit it completely. So I agree with that. His spelling on his name is like super weird. I'm trying to come up with some good example of it. I want to say his real name here, of course. But it's like, oh my god. Give me a good example in my brain here. I should have done it earlier. But it's kind of like you probably seen the sketch with Keely and Pam with the whole D-Nice, Aaron, yeah, Black K, as a Blake and so on. That's kind of how his name is, right? So the thing is that I didn't know how this guy's name was spelled, and I don't think anyone else really did either. But he's gonna start, at this day, like Monday, 1st September, whatever. He's gonna start the day. And because before he arrives at the office, the CEO adds him to our Slack channel. We have Slack here at the office, right? So we have, 50 people on the Slack, right? So we see his account being created before he actually arrives himself, right? Because obviously they're adding it before he comes there, and then we can read his name, And everyone's like, Belaki? Everyone's like, what, Aaron? Why is he spelling his name like that? You know what I mean? Immediately, everyone is like, oh, that's a really weird spell. Like, his name is Aaron, right? Why spelling it A-Aaron? Like, he's spelling it like that. Like, his name is spelled like the guy is mispronouncing his name. Like, honestly, this guy, I keep saying it, he got a really, really weird spelling of his name. He literally is spelling it like Aaron. Like, he's not spelling it, he's spelling it, So we're like, wait, his name is Aaron? I thought his name was Aaron. Like, he's spelling it like the joke. What? Like, and the CEO was like, that's how he spelled. I have his, resume here. That's how he spells it. We're like, huh? Right? Like, this is super weird. But okay, so okay, fine. He has a really weird name, and when it happens, right? I am close to the lead programmer at this company. Okay. The lead programmer is exactly what I explained to you now, guys. He's a competent guy, though, but he's incredibly low skills when it comes to, humans, right? And he has no friends or whatever. He has never friends. This is the guy. And I'm just going to him like, please don't correct his name now. He's just like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, I know who you are. Like, his first day at work, do not ask him about why his name is Aaron, okay? Just call it, because the guy is calling his own, it's polite here, he's calling himself, oh, my name is Aaron, right? But he's spelling it like with like 3 A's, A-AA Aaron. Super weird. So we're like, don't correct him in that. Just call him Aaron. Don't ask him about Aaron. He's gonna have a HR issue. You can't do it the first day at work. He's gonna go to HR immediately. Like, you don't do it, okay? I'm like, you always do these things. I'm just going to this guy, like, please, because this guy is always doing this dumb stuff, right? I worked for him for 2 years, so I'm like, no, please don't do it, right? And as soon as this guy enters the building, of course, he opens the door. This guy comes in, to meet his new first job out of the college. Immediately, the lead programmer goes up to him and asks him, why are you spelling your name A-A? Are you stupid? Are your parents dumb as F, And he says the F word and so on. He's like, what? The guy's been for like a minute. Then he says, like, your parents are idiots. Like, why did you spell your name like Aaron? Your name is Aaron. I hate you, basically. No, but he's like literally grabbed him. First thing he does is like, what's wrong with you? Your parents are dumb. Like, he gets up and calls them F word. Yeah, like effing stupid. And I was like, oh, for God damn it. You promised me you wouldn't do this thing. He's like, yeah, but I lied. And I was like, yeah, of course you did, yeah. And then, of course, he immediately like, what? And then it's like, the CEO is like, HR. He's like, oh, yeah, meet with him again. Every time with this guy. And it's like, even if I'm telling this guy, I'm like, do not ask him about his weird name spelling. It's something weird with it. I know, and I agree with you. His name is spelled incorrectly. It's super weird. But do not ask him about it. Maybe you could do it like in a few weeks from now, maybe a few months from now, when you kind of know him. Don't ask him about it immediately the first day. No, I won't do that. He comes like, why are your name spelled wrong here? Like, he goes up in his face, like an autistic child, like, why is your name wrong for? Your parents are dumb. You're like, Jesus Christ. And he literally calls his parents effing stupid in front of the whole, so obviously it's a HR issue. You're like, yeah, this is great. Stuff like that happens all the time in the gaming industry. And it sounds like unbelievable, or it's just kind of funny, but it happens all the time. Like, literally, I worked there for many years, and I've seen these kind of things happening over and over again, where you have these people, right, they're acting incredibly improper, and they do it because they don't know any better. Like, they're like small children, basically, when it comes to their behavior, right? And coming back to what I talked about earlier, they don't get fired, right? As I mean, last week, because they have this toxic positivity, so they don't fire them, right? Because normally, if you worked at, say, the government or something like that, right, or some other more proper company, you did that stuff, you'd be like, okay, you're fired. You'd be like, get out, yeah. You would be like, maybe the first time you will get away with it, but obviously, I knew for a fact, right, that this lead programming guy, he does this all the time, he does it like every goddamn month. So I was like, that's why I'm like, please don't do that thing where you insult persons. Don't insult someone that you just hired for the first minute to do. Even if you're right, even if you're objectively correct. Because I agree with you. His name is stupid, but don't say that to him. You keep it inside, and you can say it to me later. He's stupid. Yeah. Don't call the new guy stupid the first thing you do. He's like, okay, he's stupid. Your parents are all stupid. Yeah, I'm like, okay, great. Yeah, like, obviously I expected to do it right because he doesn't know. Yeah. That's what I expect, right? And it's like, oh my God. So that's not what someone should have done, right? And they don't get punished for it either. But that's more, like I said, again, look at my video last week. Let's look for that first link in the video below. And I will explain much more in detail how people never get punished, right? So I won't address it now then, because I talked about it last week. But you can see what I'm talking about, right? That thing kind of like, is very common as well then, right? Like, you don't punish people, and their bad behavior stays, right? Which also makes it woke to people, because you keep people crazy. You keep crazy. Now, this guy isn't particularly woke by insulting people, but I mean, if you have some woke crazy person, and they also do dumb stuff, they also won't get fired, right? So they kind of have this, like, weird thing, right? They just stay forever. Now then, this is something I made a video about earlier this year. So that is a good video, honestly. One of my better ones this year, which is education. Okay. We can go into education a lot here. We can talk about education at massive length here, right? If you really have to. But I will keep it shorter then, because, like I said, I made a video about how Swedish education is really terrible. Like how Sweden has this really weird vocational school that ruins the students and so on. But that's one of the issues then, of course, vocational schools. But in general then, right? In general, education, of course, makes people a lot vocal, right? An obvious factor why. So, I don't have to probably explain that, but we all know it, right? We all know it's a fact that the educational in the West, right, in Europe, in America, and so on, is very left-leaning, right? They've been very infused with Marxist, communist ideas, and so forth for since the 60s, the 50s, right? And you probably see the clip, right, with the Russian guys playing that it's a plan from Russia and so on. And even if it isn't a plan by Russia or China or whatever, all this stuff, it is very, very accurate, of course, that most, whatever academia is very left-leaning. Like that's like a no-brainer. And even I think that most people in academia also admits it, right? Now, I am personally also in academia, right? I'm a published author, I wrote stuff, I work for some schools, and we all know that's true, right? And so that's the first thing. We can just, I think without any doubt in our mind, we can always say that yes, most schools or whatever that these people go to will probably be left-leaning. It's very, very unlikely have a game developer went to a right-leaning like university or whatever, because they basically doesn't exist. They're all left-leaning, right? They're all left-leaning or extreme left-leaning, yeah. But honestly, that's kind of how it is, right? You either have schools, especially in America, right, which are extremely left-leaning, which are just like, oh my god, like that, oh, I would rather not send my kids there, even if it was free, Like either you have the schools that are just insanely left-leaning, and that or they are. Oh, sorry. Oh no, my RAM. Continue here. Domino effect. Yeah, she pushed 18 as well. Oh my god. Hitting the mic was bad. My point is that they're either left-leaning, right, extremely left-leaning, or they are just lesser left-leaning. But here is the left, and they all go in this thing, right? Yeah, they're all left-leaning or just less left-leaning, but they're all left-leaning. So even the schools that are, not extremely like communistic or whatever, you still have a lot of like this, right? But anyway, that's obvious. We can just all, I think everyone is gonna agree with that. Like I said, I think it's interesting to point out that I think even, this is what I know, professors I know a lot of people, professors, and even they working at this left-leaning academia places will also agree that it's left-leaning. Yeah, it's like a known thing, and it's hard to find a professor that is disingenuous saying that it's equally right and left and so on. No one believes it, not even themselves, So that's something at least that you can tell you how left it is, right? Because even themselves will be that. But whatever, I digress. So that's one thing. So, but obviously then we take the students, right, and they go to this school and they will get infused with left-leaning Marxist ideas, so forth, right? That's just a fact. Like I said, the level of left-leaningness is quite different, of course. And some of them are incredibly bad at it, some of them are slightly at it. So it's not black and white, though. I think it's unfair to say that every university is equally bad. That is dumb, right? That is really stupid to believe that. That's not how it is. But even like clearly like big famous STEM universities tend to even be left-leaning, right? That being said, there is obviously a massive difference between like a STEM university and some kind of college, liberal art college with bachelor in art or whatever. Yeah, they're obviously very, very different. The STEM universities tends to be much more conservative comparably and much more factually based, right? So there is a big difference though from like the most left to the most lesser left. But like I said, even the STEM universities tend to be somewhat left-leaning. Even they are left-leaning, right? But how I say it? Not only the university itself, but it obviously is a difference then between who or what is studying, right? So if you have a kid, he's 25, fresh out of college, and you want to interview him, it's obviously be a big difference if he comes from like a STEM background, right? He learned only math and science and only like studied math, physics, chemistry, or if he studied like I don't know, dancing, So there's obviously a massive difference between what they actually studied though. That is very, very clear, right? It's very, very clear. And that also brings me to a point that I think is very, very important. This is a super important point that I've said to people for many, many years. And this might be the point of the video if you're an actual, like, say, developer, or if you are a hiring guy, you're gonna hire people. There's one thing that I think is super important to remember, and it's like, as you hire someone, right, for your game company, is that don't hire someone that went. Super important point. This point has to be delivered correctly. Okay. Most important point, if you are yourself a game developer in this video, don't hire people that went to school to become game developers. Hire developers that went. Okay, that's bad. But yeah, point. Hire developers. No, I got it. I'm prepared for this point. Okay, one last step. Okay, don't. Okay, I always say this to people: don't hire people that went to school to become game developers. Hire developers that likes video games. Right? Hire game designers that wanted to work with game design, but they actually studied psychology or engineering or whatever. Right? Hire the engineer that actually wanted, right, to be that. But they have an actual degree or something like that. Basically, it's like there's so many people, they are studying these really terrible schools, right? Like I said, I made a video about that. Vocational schools, they're really terrible, like really, really terrible. And you should not study those schools at all. They have very little value. You only learn one thing and so on, right? And then there are people going to like game development bachelor degrees. Okay, people starting shooting whatever, but it's like long. As it is, you know, people are starting blasting now. It's like 12 hours left to New Year's, whatever. A lot of people go to these, I don't call them like game bachelor degrees, something like that, right? But again, then there's much more value usually in hiring you an actual engineer, like a normal engineer, right? You studied normal engineering, math, science, physics, right? Mostly math then, and coding and so on, if it's like a computer engineer. And then they also like video games, right? When it comes to game designer, you don't want someone studied game design school. I hate that shit, yeah. They're almost always terrible game designers. You want someone that is like, oh, I'm an engineer, you know, oh, I got a bachelor degree in computer science and coding, but I also really like design. Just took some extra design courses, but I also can code, you know. Like that's like much better designer because they can do something else. They just have ideas, right? But otherwise, if you want to have a proper like a game designer, like an actual intellectual game designer, you want to hire someone that studied like, you know, behavior science, UX design, like psychology behind it, right? So usually talk about HCI then, MDE, MSc and so on. But basically you talk about stuff that goes under the umbrella of human-computer interaction, right? So take someone like that, they studied that for like 5 years, right? Maybe 10 years in PhD, and then they also like games, right? That's a person that you much rather have than someone that studied like game design, and they can only refer to the basic, you know, game design mechanics or whatever. No, I want to have someone that actually understands people's behavior, your brain, psychology, and then they apply that into games, right? And also, personally, listen to the thing, if you're a student, you should also study the topics, right? Because, like I mentioned earlier, game industry pays you terribly and all this good stuff, right? So if you study, for example, to be a game designer, you will be stuck as a game designer mostly in your life. It's hard to swap, you know, from being a game designer. But if you study, like, you know, psychology, or then usually then you study, like, you know, HCI, some kind of like mixture between human and computer, yeah, interaction between those things. That's kind of like my master degree, isn't it? You study that, right? Like my master, and then you can easily say, "Oh, I'm bored of the game industry for 2 years. I'm gonna go and work for whatever, Microsoft or Google or whatever. They're gonna pay me 5 times more salary too." So I'm leaving, guys. No, but it's easy to get, you know, hired at any other IT company, right? Because you got a master degree in a topic that's very, very crucial for normal IT business, right? And you can also maybe go and work at some like whatever science lab, whatever. But like, you got a point. So both as someone that's hiring, but also like someone that is actually trying to, you know, get a job, whatever. You should get a job in, or sorry, education in something that is much more usable and malleable and adaptable than just being a game developer. It should be again, you know, hire a person that is studying to be a developer that likes games, not a person that studied, game development, right? It's gonna be a very big difference. It's also honestly, it's pretty easy to learn what you learn in those game development courses compared to what you learn as normal, so to speak, developer, a normal engineer, right? Because the difference is that they will have some maybe game design courses, maybe some courses in like Unity, well, really whatever, right? But learning like an actual engine is the easiest thing in the world. The engines are very simplistic. They are used for dumb people, right? Game engines are used to so that people that are artists or whatever that have no technical skills can learn them, right? That's the point of them. So if you are a bachelor degree in like computer science or a bachelor degree in like game science kind of thing, which are a real thing, you probably will use easily, if you have a bachelor degree in normal science, you can easily learn those stuff by yourself, like in a shorter time. So it's like no point going to school for that. And we can break it down at length here, but I think it's very important to understand this thing, that the schools are worse, as I call it, right? The schools are terrible. So, like I said earlier, we have the whole, obviously the schools are vocal or whatever. I mean, clearly they are, much more vocalified or whatever, obviously. But then the schools are pretty bad, right? And the schools are not good, and they teach them bad stuff. And a general issue is just that, kind of what I brought up there, right? That if you look at historically speaking, right, when I was going to college, and not exactly, but more or less, when I was going to college, even if I wanted to, it didn't exist like a video game bachelor program or a master degree in video games. It didn't exist, when I went. I'm old, so to speak. So when I went to college, that barely was a thing. Maybe some other country perhaps, but like it was barely a thing, or a smaller state or whatever. But it was barely a thing. However, today then, right, many years later, now people go to this like mid-vocational shit school, whatever. Right? Yeah, that wasn't a thing back then. So what means that I got a proper, and this sounds like very bragging, but my point is that I got a normal, like master degree, a normal bachelor degree, etc. Right, so to speak, and then I apply those skills in my just being a nerd and love video games and manga and anime and Marvel comics, etc. And I just love DC Batman, but I just know all that stuff, right? And I apply my general skills into that topic, right? When I was at Disney, I went to Disney many years ago, right? Like 10 years ago, and obviously then I'm applying my knowledge about Disney cats, right? With the course actual general science that I learned, right? I think it's a massive minus that we have these schools are focusing purely on the games or whatever. And I have never met a student from those schools in any country that are better than the kids, so to speak, that just went to a normal education and then again applying it, right, or in the diversity, so to speak. It's very, very strange. It makes it worse. And it also makes it worse, like I said on the video, because you also bring in a lot of these, tourists, right? So that's what some people are tourists now. Before we get to tourists in general, it also brings in more bad students, right? Because when you have a bachelor degree or a master's degree and so forth, right, at like an university, which is a very established university, so now it's gonna be braggy here, but I went to, my country's number one, like STEM university, and going to that, right, and getting to speak a real degree there matters a lot more, of course, for all kind of jobs, right, than just going to like some random, new build gaming bachelor degree that no one heard about before, right? In so many ways. It also matters because it's easy for me to change job, of course, but it matters because obviously getting into that school is just a lot easier, right? You know what I mean? And it sounds easier to just get in there, and also easier to get a job because you get a game job, right? And it sounds more hot game job. So what you end up with? So I'm stuttering, but what you end up with? I'm frustrated now because this is so terrible. So what you end up with, right, are people. They're going to a school that is absolute shit, okay? The school itself is terrible, and everyone knows that, right? But they have no actual requirement to get in there. They can have really bad scores. The SAT score is terrible and so on as they get into this school. And they have this like very general dream of making games or whatever, right? So you create these like really terrible schools that just have no actual talent, and it's just they're not gonna make them become good at anything, right? They're not gonna be good at game development or whatever, no, or just coding and so forth. They end up as really terrible. You just waste their time, you just waste their life. It's really sad. Honestly, it's really sad. It's a waste of time. And I told people this many times over the years now that instead of trying to take the easy road, right, of going to like a gamer bachelor degree or whatever, and instead of getting an actual bachelor degree people actually care about, instead of taking the easy road, when you're going in there because you couldn't get into the real school, restudy, study, improve your ST score, study the grades, go to whatever grown up college. Yeah, go to the. It's better to aim to get into the read degree than getting this faith degree, basically, this cornflake degree, basically, right? Because it won't give you anything anyway. And I think that we're all gonna see that way less now, though, because it has been probably too easy to get into the game industry from these shit schools, right? Because it's been booming, and I know the game industry obviously is going up in revenue, so to speak. But as you see, right, there's a lot of layoffs this year. Obviously, it's Vogue gaming companies failing, but also generally layoffs, right? So I think we're gonna have, because it's hard to get a job in the game industry because of that reason, it's gonna be even harder now for these like nobodies that go to terrible schools to get a job too. So I think we're gonna see less of these like mushroom popping up shitty schools that no one actually go to. But they make me feel really sad because I have never met a single person going to those schools that actually have any talent whatsoever. And generally, as I said in another video, which is a lot longer of a topic, I mean, like, if you go to those schools, I would rather not hire, like, I would rather have you no education, basically. It's so bad that I'm just like, you probably can learn faster by yourself, so why would you go there, you're supposed to go to university to learn something on a deeper level, right? I hate people that go to university for something that's very easy to learn and very juvenile. Yeah, it's very simple. Like, what's the point then? You're supposed to go to university to learn something deeper, something complicated. Yeah. It's a general hate. It's a general hate I have for this thing. Then. But next point, I mentioned tourism. Yes. Now then, tourist. And what can I say, right? Game development is today filled with a bunch of tourists. Simple as it is, game tourists. They have no skills, they have no talent, they have no actual love for the game industry. And they're very, very common, of course, today, right? Because the game industry is popular. So, first of all, why do we have so many more tourists? Well, it's kind of obvious, right? I mean, game development is just way more popular now, right? It is like thousand times popular when I started in the industry. Yeah, it's like so much bigger now, And the same thing for anime or Marvel comics or whatever, right? Obviously, Marvel comics, thanks to the big movies, right, has become way bigger. Oh my god, right? Before we had the movies, before we have, the Avengers and those movies, obviously Marvel comics were very, nerdy and outcast and so on, right? But now liking Marvel is one of the most basic thing ever. It's the most generic bitch thing ever, right? To like more. Yeah, now it's like liking Marvel is just like everyone like Marvel movies, right? That being said, though, I had a coworker stuff like that. Also, coworker stuff, but seriously, I had a guy talking at work 2 years ago, and he pissed me off honestly because he was like, "Oh, I'm a Marvel fan," talking about a Hobbit there. I was like, "Oh, so which are you reading?" And mostly blah blah blah. He's like, "Reading? I mean the movies." I'm like, no. If you're a Marvel fan, I would assume you mean the comic books, okay? It's like, I'm sorry, but no. I don't accept that, okay? No one can be a Marvel fan and only like the movies, okay? I hate it. but anyway, I digress. My point, of course, is that, yeah, the movies made the comics massive, right? So that's one example. Obviously, the game industry growing so much in revenue, more money, a lot of players, right? Obviously, we have a lot of mostly women playing these like gacha games, right? The match 3 games, whatever. Candy Crush and so on, right? Stuff like that. Super common. What more do we have to change it? Well, one thing that made games more popular is Tony Hawk Pro Skater. I was bringing it up, but I love Tony Hawk, right? It's one of my favorite games of all time. And I also love Tony Hawk himself. He's a badass guy. But Tony Hawk is actually interesting because PlayStation 1 is the console that is the most important cultural switch in gaming, because PlayStation 1 was definitely the console where like normies started playing video games much more, and games were seen as cool. Some of the games, right? And the coolest game, of course, was Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk was a massive success, and it was very important for the game industry because it really made the first game that was really cool. And the cool kids at school would actually proudly play Tony Hawk, right? When it was released, the first game. So there was a massive change in that culture there. PlayStation 1 then, and then after that, I would say it's World of Warcraft. Because, again, Tony Hawk was kind of like the cool kids are playing that game, and World of Warcraft was like normal adults are playing that game, and I'm talking about it with the coworkers at the office. Or we're raiding Onyxia, me and my two friends or whatever, and all the coworkers. So that's the next game in the cultural thing that really made gaming become like mainstream, right? Because World of Warcraft eventually has millions of people playing it every day, right? In every country in the West, so to speak. So we're talking about it, and everyone kind of knew someone that was a grown up playing World of Warcraft. Now, of course, I also played World of Warcraft, right? But as a kid, you know what I mean? But we had actual grown up, like my mom's brother would play World of Warcraft, that kind of thing, right? Yeah, so even like normal people, adults would play World of Warcraft. So it's a massive change too, right? And then we have other, of course, stuff in history. But I would say those are the two, actually, the biggest cultural changes when it comes to the gaming landscape. Another game generally on PlayStation is FF7, of course, Final Fantasy, because the graphics were so amazing. No, but seriously, just the graphics, right? I remember FF7 was released when I was a kid. People were like, "My God, this is unbelievably beautiful," right? People would come home to me, right? People in my class would come home to me, used to watch the cutscenes, right? It was like, "Oh my God," right? Me and my friends, me and my bottom tier nerd friends would tell them, no, trust us. This is the greatest CDI ever made. You can't even understand it. Like, what? So people go to my place and have different save locations for different cutscenes. This is for YouTube, right? So we had to watch them at the save files. And I would load different, like, here's Bahamut and so on. And people were like crying. People were like, this is unbelievable. Like, this is the graphics now? Yeah, so FF7 definitely shocked people just how incredibly good it looked, honestly. Stuff like that, generally, of course, made PlayStation 1, of course, like I said earlier, the biggest cultural swing then, right, for gaming, because it made it just much more acceptable by the cool kids to play games, right? And then, like I said later, then World of Warcraft PC, then years later made it just acceptable for adults to play games, right? So to speak. So those are the two major brings, right? And then I guess arguably the third swing is that for adult women it was acceptable to play like Candy Crush, I guess. Honestly, yeah, probably. Probably the next swing, honestly. The big swings. But anyway, because of these swings, right, gaming now then is much more acceptable, popular, right? And you have the money and so forth. So we're getting all of these, oh, I'm a nerd girl, or whatever. And they're coming in there and they want to work in the industry, right, And also obviously there are two things here that are very interesting for tourism. First of all, you've probably seen all this cultural war, right, between YouTubers and influencers and Twitch streamers and, of course, whatever, Kotaku and IGN and these game spots and whatever, these terrible magazines, right? And I think that's one thing we have to also address here, that I am not talking about, game journalists video. I'm talking about, game developers, right, in the industry, not these loose outside, they can barely play video games and they lie about them. I'm not addressing the people at all in this video. That being said, though, at this, of course, particular point here, obviously these things are entwined here, of course, right? Because now, like I said, right, gaming is suddenly a much bigger market, much more mainstream, much more popular, and that, of course, brings in all these tourist journalists as well, right? So the course is combined with that. If gaming never became very popular, these losers that can't write about games would never even do it to begin with, right? So obviously that's connected with that. But I digress, but it's pointed out. And of course there's some feedback to that, because the bigger games get, the more they have to hire, PR people and consulting and so on. So of course it has some effect in that way as well, right? But I digress at that point for now then. But what can I say? The people that started joining the game industry because it suddenly is quite popular are almost all left, actually, yeah. I think it is interesting because there are many reasons why, I suppose, from a very fundamental level, but it's probably actually the merit-based issue. So the thing is that there are tourists, right, on the left and the right, okay? Let me phrase it this right. There are tourists on both left and right. So you have terrible, basically, developers on both sides of the political spectrum, right? And they both suck, okay? You don't want to hire a left tourist or a right tourist. They're both terrible. However, because of how the woke left works, they will hire, right, the woke left terrible tourist, right? no one's gonna hire the right tourists. That's kind of how the left tourists get in there, right? Because the left, as a political standpoint, have a tendency, right, to not care about merit. Right? They just hire people because they have the same opinions as values. So even if you have a right-wing, so to speak, video game company, they might not hire the guy with the correct opinions because he has no actual skill, right? Right-wing, so to speak, parties, companies tend to focus more on the actual merit but skill level, right? So they're not gonna pander to this. Yes, this guy got the right opinion, but he sucks at coding. So you know, whatever, right? The left, though, is like, yeah. The left is like, we don't care about that, yeah. But yeah, honestly, it might sound silly, but that's a major part, right? You have stuff called like Taylorism. There are other kind of behaviors where people will attempt to hire themselves and so on, right? But it's heavily documented, it's heavily proven by any reason of doubt, right? That left-leaning people tend to hire themselves more than right-leaning people do, right? The reason why, of course, as I said there, because left doesn't really care so much about your talent and skill and so on, where the right is more like capitalistic driven, usually money, you know, skill, talent is more important for the right-wing people, right? And this can actually be explained in much further detail. So, humor me a bit, because now we're gonna go on a ride here, guys. No, but humor me. So my voice is bad. What's like I said, I've been in too many parties this week, right? Usually my voice doesn't go out this early, but I guess I'm tired. But let's go on a ride then. So there is an issue, right, with how the left operates in general. The reason the left has many fails now, right? And I'm not talking about like gaming. I'm talking about Trump, about Harris, right? Whatever, rise of right parties in Europe and so on, right? A big issue is because the left doesn't care about merit, right? The left cares about, you know, political correctness. It cares about, it looks good on visual, right? It looks good on shallowness. For example, we're gonna hire this immigrant because it then looks correct, right? We're gonna have more whatever diversity and so on, right? Of course, not diversity in opinion, but diversity in skin color and gender and so, you know what I mean. So the left cares about these, I will say it, imaginary points, right? I guess honestly, right? The left cares about imaginary points, like for example, having a person that is trans, having a person that is non-binary, queer, and so on, right? That gives some imaginary social value points or whatever, right? That's what the left cares about a lot more, of course, than the politics, where the right cares more about, you know, merit, money, and so forth, right? So that immediately kind of makes them who would hire, right? Okay, but why is it like that? And this is what I mean to your right here now. So the reason, right, the left thinks more like this, right, is because left fundamentally is about stuff like social economical factors, right? The left wants to believe that no matter what you do in life, it doesn't really matter. It's basically that whoever raised you, how much money you had, in, you know, in what state you grew up in, and so on. We're blaming it on, you know, bad environment, bad schools, or whatever, right? And everyone can be malleable and forced into whatever you can. That is called the tabula rasa ID. So tabula rasa is an ID that everyone is what's called a blank slate, which means that there's no, you know, nurture versus nature. It's all, you know, say nurture, there's no nature. It's purely where you grew up and so forth, right? And money you had and so on. Your DNA doesn't matter and so on. Of course, it's complete horseshit. No actual scientists actually believe in this thing. Any reasonable person believes it's both nature and nurture. But especially no one in the right mind would believe that it's only nurture, right? Because nature is stuff like your genes, right? Your DNA, your gender, stuff like that, right? But of course the left wants to pretend it doesn't exist, right? But of course it does. And even if we ignore the whole gender debate, obviously just like I am pretty tall, I'm pretty muscular, I'm hot, you know. No, but seriously, that stuff like being tall, bigger, muscular, obviously affects my life choices, right? For example, because I'm bigger than almost everyone when I go around, bigger. No, but I'm, you know, I'm big and tall, and I'm very, you know, big shoulder span, right? So when I go out on the street, I tend to not be afraid, right? If I meet a person on the street, because I am bigger than like 90% of people I meet at least, right? Probably more than that, 5. So I am the scary one, you know, in the dark alley, you know what I mean? No, but seriously, right? Stuff like that, of course, affects your life, right? If ignoring, again, gender is real, not whatever. you stuff like height, right, muscle mass and so on, of course affects your life. Because I have never been afraid really when I go outside, right? Because I am always the biggest one. You know what I mean? And I'm also a martial artist and so forth. But you get my point. Like I'm a big I'm a big hulking Swedish guy, right? You know, and I lived in countries like Japan and so on. I'm a way bigger than the average Japanese person, right? Like way bigger, like twice the size. You know, it's like 3 Japanese men on my height, you know, on my size, right? Yeah, like I'm way bigger than them. Like why would I be afraid? You know what I mean? So stuff like that, right, affects your life, right? You can't ignore that. But of course, the left pretends it doesn't exist, right? But it's silly. And all the stuff like that also is actually important. For example, if you didn't know that, like I said, I'm a big muscular man, right? Big muscular guys tend to vote right. There's no incident, right? There is no there's no accident. Yeah, big muscular men tends to vote right. There's no accident. I mean, that, for example, my feminist, schoolmate has a very like meek man, right? Because that's how it is. Muscular men tends to vote more right-leaning, which might sound conservative and the trade. No, it actually goes all the way around, right? Because the mentality is actually that people that are more masculine, like more merit based on physical traits, right? Physical trait men tend to almost always vote right because we feel that why wouldn't I be a right winger, right? Because merit is important if you're muscular, right? Because I'm stronger and faster or whatever than other men are. Obviously, I want the value of merit, right? Actually, it's that simple. Honestly, it's very very simple. Honestly, almost every muscular beefcake man again will be right winning because for us, right? As me, muscular. I can compete, right, with other men and defeat them, you know what I mean? Because I know for a fact that I'm stronger and faster and so on, right, than most men, other men. I know that I have an advantage, right? So even if I don't think about it from an open standpoint, more like a standpoint, I know that for me it's a benefit if we have a merit-based society and not, a left society where everyone's equally worth everything, right? No, I want society to be competitive, right? Because I have a competitive edge against most older men, and obviously I'm much bigger than the average female as well, right? So I have a very physical advantage, and this is a fact I have, because I'm big and strong, but seriously, right? So this is a thing that's very, very true, that physically strong men tend to almost always vote right-leaning, right? Because we have it inherently in us that competition and so on is advantage for us, right? Which again it is, right? So what happens then is that, like I said, people like me, right, big strong guys, we tend to also then value merit in other parts too. For example, economy, right, at office, at careers. So it's a very interesting kind of overlap there, because the whole alpha men or whatever, right? But men in like my body shape, so to speak, tend to also be more aggressive, right? We're more like typical aggressive. I'm a Viking, right? More aggressive, but it tends to be in our mentality, high testosterone, but also it is of course a mixture, right? My muscle mass, of course, partially comes from having probably higher testosterone, right, than the average man, right? And while very, very meek men, they have an androgynous shape, right? They look more feminine. They usually, of course, have a lower testosterone, right? And they might have higher estrogen and so on. Yeah. A reason that they are slimmer and tinier and so on is, of course, because of perhaps lack of hormone, right? And they also become less aggressive then. So it's a very interesting overlap there, right? But the whole idea then of the left men, and not only as the ally and the male feminist, right, but that the left men tends to be weaker and smaller and so on, right, is actually scientifically proven. Of course, you can be a big muscular guy and vote left. You can be a tiny guy and vote right or whatever, so to speak. I'm not saying this is 100% conclusive of what we're going to vote for, but it is a very clear mental overlap between physical prowess and what you vote for, right? But I think but I read this in papers 20 years ago, whatever. And I keep saying, for me, it makes perfect sense, right? Because why wouldn't I, as a physically stronger, bigger man, want the society to be based around, talent and skill, right? Now, of course, it's not much talent is being bigger and stronger, but I get my point. If you lived in a Stone Age, right, and our skills were basically only I guess, basic mechanical engineering, like building the wheel or whatever, right? Building small tools, and the rest of our skill level basically is based on purely physical strength, right? And dexterity, but like speed, so yeah. Obviously, me then as, I'm a much bigger guy than everyone else. Obviously, I want us to be paid by our strength, right? Because I can easily overcome the other guy's physical strength, right? So, for example, when I did, what's it called in English? The drafting or whatever. When we went to the military base at 18, right? You have to go to the military and do your testing, right? You have to press this thing and you test your stamina, your strength, and so on, right? You can get maximum 9 in strength. I had 9 in strength, yes. A D&D character, 9 extra modifiers. Yeah, that's right. No, but seriously, right? I had max strength, max intelligence. The only thing I fault is slightly on agility, right? Like 8 or whatever. But still, it's like, why? Getting those facts, for example, then those data, obviously, I keep saying it a little bit personally now then, but obviously me then, right, knowing that, I have 9 strength, everything I got 5 strength, well, obviously I want us to be paid by our strength value, you know what I mean? I got 9 intelligence, everything I got like 5 or 6, well, obviously I want us to be paid by our intelligence level. It's like, like, obviously, like, yeah, obviously. I've never been really surprised by those facts, right? But they really are interesting. They really are like coming back together, I think, to how a lot of reality actually works, right? Coming back then, I told you if I looped it right. Hope you liked it. Coming back to this tourist part now then, when it comes to tourism, right? The reason then, of course, that most tourists are left-leaning or tourists, right? Again, the reason is tourists are weaker. Tourists are meek people. Tourists are people that aren't as educated and hard as one, right? So they tend to be, more extreme left, right? Because extreme left people are weak because they tend to like, socioeconomical factors. They blame other stuff that are actually getting more skills or whatever, right? They focus on the wrong things in life, right? They focus on victim card, right? Instead of actually improving their own skills. That's the main reason why. But also, again, the second reason why is because they hire themselves, right? And they don't care as much about this, explain, right? Merit and focus on. So it's easy for them to get hired in there, right? I said in my other video, when it comes to these people too, when they are in the industry, they also suck because they don't improve either, right? Yeah, they don't improve either. Jesus Christ. Another issue aspect in that video is that they don't improve either because they have, what I said, right, usually, of course I'm generalizing, but they have that issue of meekness, weakness. They got they got the job for free basically. They're gonna stay in the same quality of terribleness basically, which also is sad. I have a lot of coworkers over my life where I felt that there's no reason they're supposed to be here. They have no talent, they have no grit, they have nothing. But honestly, I usually pity them. I don't hate them, I pity them. Yeah, I usually feel sorry for them, overall, I feel sorry for people that can't, evolve, right? That people can't improve. As earlier in the video, I keep saying it, but my mentality is always like a Buddha. It's always like the enlightenment. It's always like teach a man to fish, right? I don't want to have my weak, colleagues, right? I want them to be stronger, right? Because I'm not afraid of them. Like I said, I'm big and strong. No, but I'm not afraid of them, I want them to be stronger. And if they become stronger, whatever strength means then, if it means intelligence, if it means skills, if it means better at coding, better at math, whatever it means, I also have to improve it, So I want to be the best, right? So I rather have everyone around me also trying to be the best, and then we can fight and compete, right? About being the best, right? You know what I mean? But I hope you answer my point there. I think it's very important to understand that there's lots of left politism and communism, especially those, right? Because communism, of course, you can't get better salary, right? Everyone has the same planned economy. You can't be awarded for being better and so on, right? So when you talk to a communist, right, they are very much against, not just freedom of speech, but the whole idea of being free, right? The whole idea of improving stuff. That's what I said earlier, that I have a deep disdain for it, right? Because I love stuff like America, you know, American dream, you know. I love the idea of working hard, overcoming difficulties, and improving, getting more money, getting more salary, getting more shares, whatever, getting more market, whatever. I like that idea, you know. I love that idea. Yeah, American dream. I hate the idea of like, oh, everyone is paid equally no matter what you do. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, this is gonna, you know, completely stop evolution, right? If everyone actually was in a communist dystopia, nothing would happen, because it would just be like, well, why should I ever do anything? I can't get more paid. I can't get better clothing. I can't get, you know, I can't buy my katana because I get more money. So I give my money, but yeah, I can't get more stuff, right? Or I can't get more land, or I can't get more whatever women. I can't get more of anything because everyone gets exactly the same, right? And for that matter, one thing that people is so funny is a side note, but I want to put out here. One thing I think is so funny too is that most people in today's society in the Western that are very pro, you know, communism are usually, you know, LGBTQ queer, some people, right? That are very progressive, and they will pretend that communism would be great for them. The thing is that they would never be allowed to be queer. I mean, obviously, right? They would never be allowed to be that, because of course in a communist country you would have to force. Oh, sorry, Jesus Christ, too much monster. Yeah, sorry, so bad. Of course, in a communist country, you have to force people to be married, right? In a typical dystopian communist society, you would have to force a man and a woman to be married, basically, and you wouldn't give them any options. There would be no gay people and so on. Yeah, in a communist. I mean, look at Soviet, whatever. Look at Russia right now. You know, look at any communist country right now. They're not very LGBTQ friendly, because they don't accept that society. They only accept, you know, their own system, right? And if the whole planet was just communism or something similar, they would probably have like forced marriage for everyone. If you probably force everyone, you have to marry that person when you're 18 or whatever, you have to have 3 children and so on. Yeah, they would have to like force this, and you can only have this much children and this and that stuff, and it would be incredibly forced, and you would never be able to be like non-binary or queer or whatever. So it was very, very strange, right? You know, the whole meme of like, you know, chicken for KFC. That's why I always feel when I see very left people defending Putin or whatever, communism or whatever. It's always like, this is Christ, it makes no sense. You were the first person to be in trouble, right? Honestly, yeah, I'm the last person to be in trouble probably, because I'm a big, white, strong guy. I'm the last person in the communist to be in trouble with. You know what I mean? I'm the last person they would have trouble with. Yeah, I would fit into their model. Yeah, like I can easily fit into whatever work they need to do. You know, you were the first person that would go out of the system. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. No, but anyway, one other issue then with the tourists is that they also hate Japan. Like, seriously. I shouldn't even laugh at it, but I can sort of say it without laughing. It's so stupid. A very common tourist thing when it comes to game developer tourists, and also just generally then, you know, the game year and so on, right, is that as we see this year very clearly, right, they hate China, hate Korea, they hate Japan, right? But I've seen it for many, many years. I was surprised, you know, that they hate Wukong and they hate Eve, Stellar Blade. Yes, Eve is hot and you got a big ass or whatever, so they hate it too, of course. But it is much more fundamental. They just don't like Asians, you know, and they don't like Japan. It comes a lot from that, because the woke tourist, or is generally the tourist self, not necessarily woke, but it's a tourist. The tourist in the game industry tend to be very, very shallow, right? So they only play the AAA games like Uncharted, you know what I mean, and those kind of games, right? Horizon and so on, and they have no concept of niche genres like StarCraft. What is that? RTS? No, but seriously, it's one thing that I have noticed so massively in the gaming industry is that, you know, when I graduated, me and my whatever classmates, we played all the games and we knew the genres and so forth, right? Maybe everyone did like StarCraft, but everyone knew what it was, you know what I mean? But now, a decade or so later, right, 10 years later, now when we get fresh graduates, 20 years later, I'm old, they're so different, you know. They only play like Fortnite, or they only play whatever, like Warcraft, don't play one game, and they tend to only play one game plus AAA games. They have no idea about many of the genres. They don't play, you know, puzzle games, they don't play RTS, they don't play strategy games, they don't play role-playing games. They only play one genre, basically. And it's just very, very strange. Yeah, it's very weird, and it feels incredibly off-putting, because if you're making a new game, right, you have to have everyone understanding a bunch of different mechanics and what is good or not, and you want people to be inspired by different stuff, right? It's kind of like, oh, I'm gonna hire someone to make a movie with me, but this has only watched romance movies, only. I'm like, we have never seen an action movie in your life? Nope. Like, but that's kind of strange, isn't it? But honestly, That's how a lot of gamers speak all day, right? And obviously, I don't refer to people actually gamers. I think it's very fake. I don't think you are a gamer if you only play one genre. That's not my definition of gamer. My definition of a gamer is you play every genre, basically. You have to play different genres every day, basically, to be a real gamer. But you get my point. It's just like these people are have a very shallow understanding of games, right? Game mechanics, game lore, game history. And even more so then, it is very focused on usually Western games, like I said, right? So they have a very weird animosity versus Japan, right? So yeah, the modern fake gamer guy or gamer girl that usually in the journalist, they have almost never played a Japanese game, right? They're just like, oh, this anime stuff, whatever. They have heard about Final Fantasy, but never played it. They never played Dragon Quest, they never played Suikoden, Breath of Fire, whatever, Dragon Story, what was that? Never played games, Katamari, what's that? Mega Man, Castlevania, right? They don't know shit, honestly, about these games. And they have this like really weird juvenile idea that Japanese games are basically all anime games, right? Like Test Abyss something. They all look like anime characters, whatever. Or they're like evil Celebrate with big ass and big boobs, right? That's the only idea they have basically in Japan. Yeah, they make tit games and anime games. Where Japan has made, a bunch of different games, right? And as I said, like Castlevania stuff, it's not an anime game, right? But they think that's how all they are. It's very, very, very weird. They have obviously they're very, very non-actual gamers. They have a very shallow understanding of video games, and these are very, very common these days. Then, thanks to the tourism, right? But like I said too, and I think it's important to understand, right? Generally speaking, here is that they hate Japan. Yeah, they have this very weird, I keep saying it, but very like strange perspective on what Japanese games are, right? They have a very like warped mindset of what the Japanese make, which is to me just dumb, right? Because think about it, Japan makes so many video games, right, per year, so many different companies, and I think that thanks to how Elden Ring got so big, people have a little bit respect, changed a little bit in that. Because now it feels like a lot of people listen about Elden Ring, of course. So they have this idea of like, oh, Japan make three kind of games. They make big titty games, they make anime games, and they make Elden Ring games. Soul, Dark Soul games, yeah. Soul-like games, yeah. They have like, that's what they make. No, nothing else. No strategy, no role-playing games. No, they make these three games. Yeah, these are the games they make. So honestly, yeah, adding the Souls-like game to that list as well, though. But it's very strange, and they have this like, very much, oh, America is so much better. And this, of course, is especially true for the journalists, right? All these IGN, Kotaku, and so on, they have a really big hate bomb for Japan. They've had it for so many years. Of course, it's a combination of being incredibly, touristy, never playing other games that are not mainstream, or whatever, right? Of course, that's maybe why. Second reason why, obviously, is because Japan has never really been, PC or Vogue, so they hate it because they're making big TV games. They hate it too, right? And then this year, as I said earlier, right, when we see Celebrate coming in, Vuitton coming in, and so on, right, for them it's just like, part of Japan, right? It's like, oh no, countries next to Japan are also making good games. We have to hate them, right? I keep saying it. I was never surprised for a second how they treated Vuitton and so on, because that's exactly what I expect from the journalist in the West, right? Absolutely, and also of course a lot of their followers. But it's important to understand. And lastly, I kind of touched upon it a little earlier, but one thing that I have hated so much with new game developers or fresh out of college, tourist people, is that they know so little about anything. Mythology, movies, books, anime, whatever. So when I make a game, right, I wanted to focus on certain aspects. If I make a new hero in a game, the hero should be a reference, perhaps, so some mythology, right, or some team or something. Let's say I was working on Riot Games, right, and I make a new hero, like a new champion, right, or whatever, Dota, doesn't matter. It has to have a team, Oh, it's like based on this god, Zeus. So he throws lightning bolts. Yeah, point. Very simple. But for example, I made a game with one of the heroes called Kronos, right? Kronos is the god of time. Okay, so we can make him have time powers, right? Not too complicated. I must say this is some genius invention. Points is that I like to have, stuff that has, a team going on, right? I like to have a backstory per hero, right? That explains how they got the power, or something like that. But if you have a god, like a Kronos, he's born with time power, so it's easy to explain that then. But if you have some other, let's say you have a female warrior lady, 25-year-old, and she has gravity powers. Then you might have a backstory, how she was, cursed by this guy to get powers of whatever, or she was blessed by this goddess to earth power, and you know what I mean. Yeah, I want to have some team, right? And then she might have like a Gaia punch or something because Gaia blessed her, so she can make herself heavier and she can turn her head into stone, and you know what I mean. I want to have a team, right? Animes are good at that. I think most shonen animes are good having a team with the character. Most are good at that. I think Japanese culture in general is good at that when they create characters in gaming and anime and so on, to have them have some kind of like a coherency between their abilities, their backstory, and their personality, whatever, right? And I think that's something that Black Clover is very good at, because he also adds what's called telegraphic character design. Tabat Sensei, so he makes character that have a backstory that makes sense, and have personality that makes sense, and everything's like a red line, right? And then they also name them using something based on who they are. So, for example, Yami, he can use dark magic. Yami means dark in Japanese, right? Or black or whatever, or like dark, yeah. So his name is like dark, and he goes black magic. It kind of makes sense. Fugulon, he's like a lion team guy, and Fuge means fire in Spanish, right? So I like that kind of design when the character has, and he got red orange hair too, right? That he uses fire magic. So I see, yeah. And he's like the lion noble guy. So he's like Leon, is lion. His sister's called Melona. Oh yeah, meteor, fire, meteor, fire. And okay, and Leon. Okay, yeah, female lion with meteor powers. Okay, makes sense, And she got red hair too, So I like that, right, when the characters are red line all the way through, a lot, right? And I get so frustrated. I just get so frustrated with these tourist, so to speak, developers. They have so little knowledge about all the stuff, right? So, for example, when I was working on this Kronos hero, I'm just like, okay, next hero, he will have time power. He can warp, he can do this thing, he can heal himself by going back in time. He can regain his body parts by reverting in time, and yada yada. It makes sense. And these 22-year-olds are like, who's Kronos? I'm like, the god of time? They're like, I never heard about before. Like, you never heard about Kronos before? Chrono? Like Chrono Trigger or whatever? Chrono means time in Greek. And they're like, no, okay, I have to explain to you what Kronos is. You know what I mean? Like, that to me is embarrassing, right? I've had meetings so many times in my life now where I have to explain to someone who Zeus is. I'm like, you never heard about Zeus before? They're like, no, what's that? Like the god in Olympian god thing? He got lightning stuff? They're like, why is that for? I'm like, what? I have to explain to you who Zeus is? You know what I mean? I sat there at one company, I had to explain to them what a swings is, what Zeus is, what a chimera is. I'm like, have you guys not ever seen anything in your life? Except, what is wrong with you guys? That's a very typical tourist thing, right? If we go back 20 years in the gaming industry, people know everything. Yeah, the people will know all of this stuff, right? It used to be that, that's because game developer was so more uncommon. It wasn't as popular mainstream, right? People that liked games and wanted to be game developers were super hardcore, right? Yeah, so they knew everything there was to know about not just gaming, but Fable and this stuff and so forth. They were playing the D&D, they watched anime and so on, right? And one thing I think was very, very common back in the days was when I was in college, and I say it many times in more videos too, is that in college it was like everyone that I went to college that liked game development, and I didn't go to like a game developer college. Right? I went to like a real proper college, but still though, of my classmates that was interested in perhaps making games after college anyway, right? We all also shared that we loved manga and anime and comic books. All of us, literally everyone was watching Code Geass, Gurren Lagann, One Piece, whatever. All of them we were all reading Bleach and Naruto. So we sat down just on Fridays in school, like 10 of us, and we read the new mangas together. That's also the reason why I started doing React stuff, because I kind of miss that feeling of just reading mangas with my friends, because we had a thing, we sat down like a club basically, on someone's laptop and put it on the screen, and we were sitting like a dozen people reading the new chapters together, yeah, all of them, and one Friday, yeah, oh, Luffy, so on, yeah, that was something I missed from college, honestly, yeah, massively, like doing read reactions together at college, that was awesome, yeah. But basically, right, back in those days, it was just like everyone was into game development or gaming really hardcore were also again hardcore into anime, hardcore into Marvel, hardcore into Spider-Man, hardcore into Batman. Yeah, it was like hardcore nerds, right? But today you get people that are like, oh, I want to make games because I like Fortnite. You're like, okay, do you like anything more? Oh, Fortnite. You're like, so you only played Fortnite in your life. Okay, this is gonna be hard. you won't get fired. You won't get hired. Basically, it becomes a massive issue, right, with these tourist things, and it's so obvious that they don't know anything else, and it's very, very frustrating. And what I usually call that, if you talk about it in more detail, is of course formal versus informal language, right? So I won't get into too much now then, but basically the big issue from a standpoint of communication is that if I can speak to you, it was called a formal language. Like I can say something and you know what I mean. We can communicate way more effectively, right? So if I say that table, you're like, oh, table, yeah, there's 4 things, blah blah blah. Okay, you get it. But informally, if you know what a table is, I have to explain to you. Oh, a table is like you have a wood plank, and then you have this thing, and then you have like 4. You have this thing tossed up. A plank? What's a plank? You have to explain it, right? So that's talking about the formal language, right? If you know all these, let's say it's manga, animes, and other games, and movies, and books, and mythologies, and fable animals. If you know all that stuff, right? And I'm telling you, oh, we're gonna make the next boss is gonna be a chimera. And you know what a chimera is. A chimera is a combination of several different animals, right? Now, a chimera is specifically actually certain kind of animals. And you have different chimeras, like a nue is also a chimera, right? And a manticore is also a chimera per se. And a griffon is also a chimera per se, right? Yeah, because sometimes the word chimera is used as a term for a mixture of animals in a monster, right? And sometimes chimera means the literal chimera. Also pronounced chimera for that matter, but yeah, you know what I mean. It's like Caraberus, it's pronounced like K because it's a K in the, yeah. So you spell with a C, right? But it's a hard K in Old Greek and Roman. So, for example, Caraberus and chimera is the correct term. But you get my point. So but if someone knows what a chimera is, then you don't have to explain to them. You'd be like, oh, the next boss will be a chimera. Okay, cool, right? And you can just say, oh, it's like a goat and this thing, but we want it to be a chimera, give it 3 heads, and each head has a different ability: fire, ice, and lightning. Okay, yeah, right. But if you never heard what a chimera is, you have to be like, oh, I have to explain to you what a chimera is. How enjoyable for me having to explain to you something super basic, like that's kind of how it feels. You're like, you don't know what a chimera is? Do you know what a swing stick is? Yeah. I literally had a meeting, I keep coming back to it, but I literally had a meeting for 2 hours trying to explain to some people what a swings was. I was like, a swings is like a woman with like a lion thing, and it's like an Egyptian thing. Look at this image here. It's thousands of them on Wikipedia here. Look at that, look at Google that. And they were like, swings, yeah. It's a classic monster. It has riddles and does this thing, it can fly. And they were like, yeah, I'm like, Christ, yeah. So that's also something that's very noticeable. But anyway, it obviously makes it. How does it make it Vogue? I'm just ranting now. No, but it actually does make it Vogue too, right? Because it makes it. How do I say it? It makes it conformative, right? I thought about it earlier, right? How it swings in one direction, right? So first of all, obviously the tourists, like I mentioned, they're not like Japan, they're not like China, they're not like Korea, and so on. They only like the mainstream AAA stuff in America, so mostly, right? That's one thing, and they're very much against niche stuff, right? That's another thing, of course. So that's very annoying. That makes them very vocal, very PC, right? In general, but it also is the whole idea that because they're so uneducated, I guess, they also become very, very, mainstream, very like, they're very. I mean, you're not gonna see much innovation for the people. Yeah, they're very much like they don't know much, and they're very limited in scope, right? So you basically will only approve and like stuff they know, right? Which is a very limited worldview, right? So of course you're gonna swing like that, right? Of course, they're gonna swing with the whole pendulum, right? Yeah, they're gonna swing with the whole flow. Stuff like that. Yeah, they are very stuck in this like very, very limited worldview, and they're gonna just agree with whatever the mainstream says, right? And I think again, then tourists does it in 2 ways, right? They agree because they don't have much other perspective. That's what they agree, right? They're very uneducated. but they also agree because they're hired by other Voke, right? So a Vokey hires another Vokey. This Vokey has no skill. It's a fake gamer, right? It's like a tourist. Has no idea what actual good gaming is or whatever, right? And they just gonna agree with their Vokey hire guy telling them to do it. They're not gonna have another opinion. So. You know what I mean? I think it's terrible too because, in a general sense, right? Of course, you don't want to hire someone that is completely antagonizing you constantly. But when I hire people, especially designers, I want to hire them to have other opinions than me, right? There's no point hiring a designer that only agrees with me. Then there's no point, right? Like, I have my own ideas. And if your ideas are the same as my ideas are, you're pointless to me. I can fire you immediately. Yeah, you want to hire designers to have different ideas, right? What else would be the point, right? If you're a really large company, I suppose you can hire them and they can work on some other you didn't touch. But in like a medium-sized company or a group, you want to have different opinions, right? Yeah. Well, that's the point. That being said, like I said, you don't want to hire someone that you just have completely opposite of you constantly. That also is annoying. But I mean, you want to hire someone that has similar value to yourself, but he still has different opinions about certain stuff, right? And also certain maybe solutions for similar issues. But these Vokies tend to hire just people, of course, that agree with them 100%. So, as is a classic meme, right? No opinion has to be different, yeah. And they end up just agreeing with something. But like I said, I think it also mostly in the tourist Voke case comes from that the Vogue tourists just have no perspective, right? They haven't played many games. They only play the mainstream games. They play like 2-3 games per year, right? They have no conceptual idea of all these much better games. Looks up at the game I watched this year, of course, or the year, but it's kind of like that. Oh, it's just like the most famous AAA games being nominated, right? More or less, it's very few niche games being nominated. Because the people haven't played those games, right? These journalists are obviously very touristic. They haven't played most games, and if they play them, it's super easy, whatever, right? And also one reason too is that talking about multiplayer games, which is very addressing, I suppose. But these tourists who are very bad at actually being, high level gaming. I don't know, like say Street Fighter, right? I like Street Fighter or fighting games, yeah. How many do you think actually of these Vogue tourists are good at Street Fighter? And I mean like master degree, I mean master level, yeah. I mean like, pro level players. How many? Like 0, right? Yeah. Because of course, it comes back to them being not very competitive, being very meek and so on as well. But also use general tourism, right? They don't go into games very deep. They play Street Fighter once or twice and then they're enough for them. They don't sit down for like 100 hours and train the combos, right? And train the different... No. Never, right? So that's one thing too. I think a very obvious thing where I have almost never liked these modern, to speak, journalists is that I know that they cannot play multiplayer games. I have never seen... I don't know, give me a comment below, but I don't know a single like mainstream gaming journalist from America or Europe that is like famous and actually does stuff, writes regular articles, and also is good at the game, an actually good multiplayer player, like Street Fighter, whatever, StarCraft, whatever you mean, that actually has like high level. Of course, there are a lot of YouTubers and Twitch streamers and so on that are very good at certain games. And talk about them, of course. But I mean like an actual, it's like a journalist that also happens to be like, oh, I'm actually the best ranked player in England or whatever in this game. Like, no, they don't exist, right? They never are like that. And that to me is just so scary too, because scary what I call it. But like when I was a kid, right, I didn't want to be a game journalist, but certainly it was something I thought sounded cool. Oh, game journalist, I'd be badass. Like, I'm an 8-year-old. I want to be a game journalist. That'd be a cool job. I can play games all day. I can be really top ranked and so on. But I also imagined that I was a game journalist, I would be the best in the world, As a child, I imagined that if I was a game journalist, I would have been also top tier, in this game, yeah. Not just like some mid-low level easy player, right? No, I imagined that I would be the best player in the world in this game, and talking about them and reviewing them and so on. But that has clearly become more a YouTube, Twitch thing these days, I suppose. That you have like a YouTuber that's the best in the world in the game, and they make videos about it. And it only makes videos about that, I suppose. And I guess it makes sense to some extent, because then they can focus on only that game, and that's true. But still, obviously, I think we all wish that the game journalists actually not only were good at games in general, but they actually were really good at some PvP games. That would also make us respect them way more, right? But I don't know a single one of that. But obviously, there probably are some of them, I have to say. I hope so that there are some journalists that actually can play video games. I just doubt it, right? It's just massively. Anyway, now let's talk about activists. So this is a very long video. God, this guy hasn't come to the activists yet. The worst one of them, the activist, our biggest enemies. The thing is that this is very true that we have the activists, right, in the game development, and they're all left-leaning woke then, right? There are of course some right-leaning activists as well. I think that you can't just ignore that, but it's like obviously left-leaning is far more common, right? We can't ignore that. And you might think that, my God, this guy is crazy. These activist guys are the worst of the worst, and he brings them up so late in this video that it's basically a footnote for him compared to everything else. But that's the truth. The activist in the game industry isn't actually that big of a deal. Yes, you have games like Dragon Age, Wheelguard, which is obviously activist push, right? But to me, it isn't the activist per se, right? It is more that the developers by themselves are just uber woke, you know what I mean? I don't think they're activists. The developers are just mentally cray-cray, right? You know, they have completely forgot what a good game is, right? And I'm not saying that because they're trans, that's my point. I'm saying that they're making a game based on their own, like, oh, I want to represent this thing, rather than making a good, fun game, right? If you're a game developer, you're supposed to make a game that's enjoyable people to play, right? Not supposed to make a game for your message, for your agenda or whatever. No, you're supposed to make a game that's enjoyable, so people play the game and they enjoy it and they give you money for it, right? These people are not arguably they're activists, but I think it goes all the way around. I think there are game developers that have terrible personalities, right? Terrible social skills, they're misfits and so forth, right? And they become activists, so to speak, you know what I mean? They become crazy activists, and they stop actually producing good games, and they're focused on producing the message instead, right? And so the whole activist thing, for me, is kind of weird, because when I hear the word activist, and this might be a bit definition here, but when I hear the word activist, right, I am more thinking of a person that would join a game company purely to force them to make the game in a certain way, right? Like the goal is to get hired and get into the game company to corrupt it from the inside, right? That to me is an activist, an infiltrator, right? You know, completely crazy, kind of like a tourist but evil, right? You know, so activists for me are like evil tourists, right? But when I see this again, when I see like Dragon Age, I don't think they are activists per se. I think they're more like game developers that lost their mind, right? And I think they're game developers that, you know, completely ignored making money and making good products and turn in themselves into activists. So I think it's a very different feel to it, and I do think those things are very different to understand, right? Because we have people that are literally will join companies to try to make them, you know, more in this perspective, make them more woke or whatever, right? And make their product more woke. But then again, in Dragon Age case, it's more like the game developers used to be normal, and then they become crazy and turn into woke while working there. So I think it's a very different how it happens. That being said, though, those developers probably were woke from the beginning, probably, but they just like turned more and more woke, you know, over the years, right? Working there for 5-10 years or whatever, they turned cray woke over the years. They probably get pushed, you know, more and more into that insanity, so to speak. I think that's probably the more reasonable explanation. But like I said, is it activist then? I guess it is in a way. I suppose. I keep saying it. I feel it's a definitional question, right? Because the example of a developer turning crazy, that's more something else. And I think that, I guess my main point here when it comes to the word activist is that I think that the game developer turning crazy, so to speak, is much more common, right? You know, the game developer working in the industry and being, you know, mentally insane or whatever, so to speak, that is a much more common occurrence than someone actually being like an infiltrator, sneaking in there, only when I work here to destroy it. That happens too, absolutely, but I don't think that's very common compared to them just going crazy, right? And that's kind of what I bring up earlier, because my earlier points, right, of no, you know, the whole bullying, being misfits, no social skills, no girlfriend, no boyfriend, all that stuff, I think is more important. Why they became like they become, why they are so woke, right? Why they are so toxic positivity, why they're so brained up, right? All that stuff happening before they had some kind of mischievous agenda, right? That comes later for me, yeah. They already effed in their head when they started working in the industry, but they weren't trying to be, you know, like woke or whatever. They just are woke because inherently their personality trait is very woke, right? Then they work there, they get the power and they just make Vogue games because they're terrible at it. And I think that, yeah, speaking, right, I said in all the videos too that the Vogue people are very talentless, right? And I think that also has an issue with the core positivity because they shouldn't never be promoted to begin with, right? I think that's a thing too that I think in the past this didn't happen as much for a couple of reasons. First of all, obviously there were less tourists in the past, so obviously there less percentage of Vogue people, right, in the companies. That's obvious, okay, super obvious. But another reason why is that I think the game companies have had, as I mentioned earlier, kind of like a super easy to make money years, right? Currently, now it's going worse for them, right? And they have to kind of like, fire people and they have to kind of go back and some stuff and so on. But I think that if you go back like 4 or 5 years ago, especially with, I suppose, Corona, right? The beginning of Corona, but even before Corona, I think game companies had like a pretty good period where they felt like no matter what they did, especially games like Ubisoft, they just threw out some, half-assed Assassin's Creed that is barely playable and super buggy, and people buy it anyway. Yeah, there was like a period there in the mid 2015 that where I felt that the actual like quality people cared about was so little, right? Especially in the Western. They have managed to make money by subpar products, right? And then these really failed activists, tourists, whatever they are, right? Whatever they are, the low-skilled Vogue people, they could remain in their positioning or even get promotions, right, over these years because they were making money even if the games were terrible, right? And I hate this game. I hate Ubisoft. I hate it, yeah. But I think there were a couple of years there where they could make money anyway, right? And now we're at a point, and it's not only is it because it's a peak Vogue or something, or Trump is winning or whatever, that's not the actual issue. I think it's more, honestly, at least I hope so at least, is that people are just really tired of, yes, also the Vogue stuff. Definitely feels like this peak Vogue has happened and people are now very tired of it. But I think also that people are, and I think it's much better, people are very tired of the mechanical lack, right? People are very tired of these games being just terrible. Like, why is this game so buggy for? Why is this game? I think that we've seen that too many years now, in again the 2015 maybe to maybe 22 or so, where it felt like gamers, or rather than tourists, right? Yeah, rather than gamers, were still buying these games. But now it feels like people are kind of tired of it the last 2-3 years, yeah. And of course, these games being Uber Vogue, absolutely is a big factor of it, right? People are very tired as well. So you have subpar products, plus they're still very Vogue, like Dragon Age, for example, and then people kind of stop playing them, right? Because if we ignore everything in Dragon Age, with the whole give me a bath and stuff, right? One thing that I pointed out very early with Dragon Age, which people barely even addressed, right, with the whole controversy, is that the game is pretty bad, right? The game's combat system is shit, right? And a lot of people say, oh no, it's the bad. No, but basically everyone that I've seen that defended that game against me, or the people, when it comes to combat system, they basically say that, oh, it's like, decent. It's like, it's like okay, that's kind of the answer you get, right? They will defend it, saying that okay, it's not the best game this year, combat design, maybe even the last decade, but it's like manageable, right? Yeah. So already at that point, you're like, this game was developed for like 10 years. It cost them way many $1 million, and they have like a manageable combat design. Okay, it's like a real time, very meh. It looks very meh. I think it was ugly like hell. In my opinion, the game was really ugly, really messy. I think it's a very, very ugly game. But also, just generally, like, okay, it's not a very good game mechanic-wise, right? And then you have other stuff in that game. For example, the puzzles, right? That have people have complained about. The puzzles are like brain dead, right? Yeah. Why even have the puzzles, right? I've seen it many times. People complain about the things, so this is nothing new, though. But a good example, right, is that they have puzzles in that game, which basically is this: like, you take the sword. Okay, yeah. Move like that. Puzzle done. Yeah, take the sword. Move to that. Puzzle done. What is the point then, right? That kind of gameplay exists in Dragon Age. Like literally, where you move a cube like that, and that's it. You don't have to move, it's not puzzle, there's no hinder, obstacle between, whatever, there's no like some kind of route. You just move it from A to B location, and A and B location is at the same screen, yeah, like it's like a meter in between, like 3 feet, whatever, yeah. It's like, what is the point then, right? That is just pointless I said bloating the game, right? The game would be better without those puzzles, right? If you remove those puzzles from Dragon Age Midgard, it would be a better game, right? And that is an incredibly bad tell on any game, where you have a game mechanic that is so badly implemented that if you just remove it, the game is better. I think a good example of that was last year. Actually, a Japanese game, which I was very disappointed in, FF16, right? F16 it has a good storyline, cool cutscenes, terrible gameplay. It's just trash, it's so brain dead. But the worst part of 16 isn't the actual shitty gameplay, which is very terrible. I think it's so bad. But it's actually the side quests, right? There's a quest in that game which are so incredibly boring. Where it's like, oh, you have to go and collect like 15 parts, whatever it is, for Mid's. Her name is actually Mid to, yeah, for her airship. You're like, oh my god, and this is a main story quest? It feels like the most like basic Volatile quest, from 20 years ago. Or I have to go to the forest and like take out 5 plants and desert and like 5, oil this thing or something. And you're like, oh my god, this is the most boring, like fetch me, 30 items this thing, right? The game has some incredible bad quest design. Like, it's so boring and it's so brain easy. And it has a lot of that. And it just feels like the game would be better just having less quests, yeah. F16 is a game that they could remove like 10 hours of gameplay, and I would give it a more score. Yeah, there's so many bad side quests in that game that if you removed all the bad side quests, the game obviously would be at least 5 hours, probably like 5-10 hours shorter, and I would enjoy the game more because those are purely bloated, shitty quests. And it's so weird too because the next quest is like, oh, we go to your old cottage that you built with Torgal and he gives you a gift and it's like super emotional. Like, what? So some side quests are like super important and super deep and emotional. The next is like, go and pick me 10 flowers for 3 hours. You're like, what the hell is this thing? Yeah, like it's incredibly inconsistent. Remove all those bad side quests and the game is actually a much better game. It's a more path, game, but yeah, more storyline, less bloated effects, right? And it's put out here. I love, older FF games, right? I love them having these bosses and so on, but that's not what this game is doing, right? Because if you had like these side bosses, secret bosses, like Osma or whatever, no, but like, Ruby Weapon and so on, etc. Those kind of stuff, right? And then you're like, okay, this is good, right? You can spend time on that if you want to, and it's very, very challenging, right? But having side quests that are just incredibly boring and incredibly easy, it just adds nothing. It's just more, it forces you to just play the game for a longer time because you want all the achievements, what I mean? It's just a bad game design. Whatever, I won't dwell too much, but it's a good point to make, right? That if you make a game and you can't understand that this mechanic is literally making the game worse, then you're really, really lost in your game development, right? Because you're like, my god, the game would be better if it didn't have this thing, yeah. Like, why work on it? Why design it for? Why code it, Why do all the art for it? Yeah, waste of time, right? In 16's case, it's probably just purely like they wanted to bloat the game time, yeah. Oh, the game takes 50 hours instead of 10 hours, 40 hours, yeah, they wouldn't bloat it, right? In Dragon Age case, however, it feels like terrible development. Not even bloating. I'm gonna guess that the game probably had better puzzles to start with, but then someone's like, oh, they're too hard, we have to nerf them. Or they had planned to make real puzzles, but then they failed because it sucks so much. But I think the game probably just shows you that this is a game mechanic they probably start implementing, and it's just half-assed, it wasn't really finished completely. And then it's better to also remove it, right? Sometimes you have to cut off the bad flash, right, and you remove it to whatever. I don't want to aggress too much here, but you get my point. You get these, like, just terrible developers that tend to perhaps in this Dragon Age case then be activists. But I think it's hard to say. It really is like the whole, egg or the hen. I don't know what came first. But in my opinion then, in my professional, so to speak, behavior or scientist opinion, what came first here is the whole misfit, outcast, bullying, social lack, no boyfriend or girlfriend, yada yada. That came first, and then they turned to activists. Right? That's my opinion about it. Oh, absolutely. And for example, in the Dragon Age case, right, that director is very famously, transformed. Very likely, right, if she had a girlfriend when she was 15 or whatever, right, and dated and smashed around and so on, she probably would be a very different person today, right, That's just basic common sense, right? If she was like a player and scored a lot in those New Year's parties, then she probably wouldn't, do what she did later on in life, right? Honestly, this is a very basic standpoint of how reality actually works, right? But who knows? Maybe not, right? I mean, after all, like I said earlier, I don't believe for a second in this, only nature, only nurture, right? When it comes to a person like that, we have to look at it both from nurture and nature, right? People are both built on their DNA, the behavior, and certainly some people are born in the wrong gender. This has been proven for many years. You can actually look at the brain waves and specifically part of the brain, and you can kind of determine that some people have a boy brain and some people have a girl brain, right? And it has been shown since many years back, probably I think in the late 90s or 2000, has been shown that you can look at brain structure of children, like young babies, and you can look at a boy, so to speak, a born boy, and say this guy got a girl brain, like what we will usually see in a girl, right? And the study has shown that, right, if you are a man born with a girl brain, I call it girl brain, but what we usually see with females, these men will grow up and almost always be gay, or perhaps turn trans. But that's actually science. And people don't want to talk about that, but it's very, very true that you can actually look at the brain of a kid, of like a 3-year-old, 2-year-old, and determine if they're going to be gay or not, like straight up, almost always. Because it is rather like, I say this thing, you can have, of course, what is called like a male brain then, right? And be gay, of course. Absolutely. So that's kind of undefined, right? But if you are in a man body with a penis, but you have a girl brain, right? You probably be gay. Yeah, like that is more of that, yeah. And of course, vice versa, if you swap it then, if you're a woman with a male brain. So that is very, very common, right? So you can find it like that. So, but I don't know about this in the Dragon Age case. I mean, I don't know the brain waves, the brain structure of the person. But there's a lot of stuff in that, the whole boy big brain and so on, and you can see different stuff, right? For example, boys is a very, very common, right? Boys, young children, young males, they like noises, right? So usually we give them toys like cars that go broom broom on the ground, so on, right? They like that stuff, right? They like toys that do a lot of noise. Female babies are not into at all. So if you have a female baby that's into all the like noise and all of that, right, she's more interested in like this annoying toys that gives you a lot of noise effects, we should pull them on the ground and so on. That usually means she has a boy brain then, for example. So I'm just throwing it out there, but you can kind of find those triggers. Usually, this is how you work with behavior science. You can find a trigger like, oh, but that's usually how boys are, and it's kind of interesting too because this whole like noisy toy thing. I'm not talking about pressing, say, blue, red. I'm talking about like a toy you put on the ground and it does this annoying, noise with the wheels, right? That kind of stuff girls usually hate, but boys like, yeah. So that kind of stuff that usually that one gender usually hates it, and the other gender really likes it, right? And suddenly you see someone from the opposite gender also really liking it. Oh, it's a tomboy, basically. Yeah, oh, it's like a tomboy, right? But with women though, they usually will grow up to be tomboys, and yeah, absolutely, so yeah, so forth, right? Which kind of is placeable, right? Because if you have a girl, a tomboy, then, right, a girl with a boy brain, boy structural brain, right? She's gonna like the same thing as boys, so more sport, more competitiveness, more aggressive, right? So you're gonna have all these like traits usually that boys should have, because you see, oh, she's bigger here and smaller there, and so on, right? So it's very easy to explain actually, I think, because if you look at the brain, you can see different parts of the brain, right? And be, oh, but yeah, this girl has a much bigger part of this part that boys have, so she's gonna also be like combat sports or whatever, probably more, right? But anyway, there'll be another video, but I'm on the topic. But I think it's important to understand how it's all structured, right? Like I said earlier in the video, I'm here to teach you, I hope, all the different ideas and a lot of stuff, not just tell you how it is, right? I'm teaching to tell you, how to fish, right? How to fish is also understand that stuff, How to fish when it comes to trans stuff is that, no, some people actually have, it's very clear in the science. Like I said, it's very clear in the science that some people are born in the wrong body. But I look at brain and I said, yes, it's very clear. But it's interesting because that topic has been hated a lot by LGBTQ people and so on, trans people, actually, yeah. Which I think is very weird because this proves them correct. But I think that it proves them. It's kind of like what's a woman, I guess. That's probably why I think it's like that probably, because when it comes to transgender people, traditionally, they want to be the other gender, right? A man that's like, oh, I'm a woman, I was born in the wrong body, the girl brain thing. Doesn't have to have a girl brain, but if they have that tends to be what they will say, right? So in their case, they want to identify as a woman, right? They want to be a woman. And I think that's probably why the modern like LGBTQ Vogue whatever hates this idea, because like I said, traditionally they will want to be the other gender, right? And they usually want to be feminine and all that stuff, right? But today it's kind of like, no, what's a woman? You can't define that one. So it's very weird because the traditional transgender person wants to be the other gender as it is traditionally, right? So if a woman wants to be a man, she wants to be masculine and big and strong and so on. Yeah, it's not the whole like concept of, oh, I want to be something. No, it's really weird. And also one reason why I think that the whole current LGBTQ Vogue, nothing matters, everything is just gender fluid, so usually also hurts trans people. I think that the traditional trans person with gender dysphoria is actually wants to be the other gender, right? And their dream is usually to be accepted as the other gender, right? To be, if you're a male to female, you want to be accepted as a female, right? Yeah, you don't want to be like not the, oh, what's a female? No, I want to be this, what I want to be, right? So the whole what's a woman thing just hurts them as well. And I think that it is probably something that you can the more LGBTQ stuff has like grown in mostly America, but in the progressive values, it probably has become this really weird mix, which is like being trans isn't the same as being queer or non-binary or whatever, yeah. And those stuff probably shouldn't be in the same group, honestly. And I don't mean group as in they are the same thing, but I mean they probably shouldn't be in the same, activist groups, right? Because they actually do hurt each other. And that's a very common thing on the left, though. Of course, the left each itself, right? Yeah. Because these different groups, the subgroups of the woke progressive mind thing, are actually quite against each other, right? In many aspects, yeah. But because they have this package deal, which is very common for PC, communism, you're either against all the ideas or for all of these, right? They have grouped them all together in one giant group, but this group is very mutually exclusive, so you can't be for all of them. So it's a very, the whole Marxist idea of this is everything you get doesn't make any sense, because internally this can't be all true in the same time. So I think that's like a huge issue for them. They can't actually combine that, right? Like it's not possible to combine that at the same time. So I think that's like the massive issue they have. Yeah, and also one reason why Trump is winning and so on, right? Not only are people tired of the wokeness, right, but there are also internal struggles then even on the left, because you might have voted for Biden or Hillary, whatever, right, 8 years ago or so on, but now it's clear, I think, for people in the LGBTQ sphere, so to speak, that some of the other leaders aren't against me, or not for me, like they are fighting what I want, right? Or these people are pushing it too much, people hating me now and so on. Yeah, so you feel like, oh, I should vote for Biden or Kamala, but I have to vote for Trump because this is going too far now, or this is going crazy, or these people are this, that, yeah, like you. So it's kind of the left eating itself in a many different ways, right? But lastly, two last points. The last point though is, so I say last now then. Now, we have another point. I'm not gonna bring it up very much now, because I made a video about it like a year ago. So I'm just gonna say, look at that video. But another factor is failed writers, failed movie makers, whatever you call it, and especially failed localizers. So it's very clear, right, that most localizers are very woke, they're very terrible, and they hate everything, and they rewrite the stuff and so on, right? Especially with the whole low cast, like, yeah, famously for that, right? But I made a video about this, like I said, and the real explanation is basically this, right? No one wants to be a game writer, right? No one wants to write video games. So basically, a game writer is someone that is trying to be an actual, writer, a book or something, maybe a movie writer, right? They're trying to be something else, and then they couldn't become that because they suck, right? So they became a game writer. So it's kind of like, I want to be a writer, like a books, movie writer, and lastly is a game writer, right? So the reason they're writing video games is because they, because they had nothing else to get the job in, right? So like I said, I made a video about it in detail, so check it out if you're interested. But basically, yeah, it's just like, no one wants to be a game writer. That's something you become after you failed your other endeavors, right? And especially localizers are even more like this. So I've been a localizer myself, right, a little bit, and I know a lot of localizers, and I worked on a few games with that. And localizers are people like either like me, you start in the industry and you're very young, you're like 20 or something, and you want to have a job, right? So you want to get in the industry, you want to get some games on your resume, so you take any job you get. And usually then, if you're very young, you will get quality assurance and or localizer, right? That's an easy job to get in the game industry. So that's what I did. That you're very young, you start like that, and then you get more experience, and then you combine it with your education, and you become a whatever designer or lead or whatever artist, whatever you want to actually do, right? But my point is that, like I said, no one wants to be a localizer. Like localizer is basically a stepping stone for everyone just to get a better job in the game industry. Basically, yeah, no one actually wants to be it, right? Same thing with game tester. No one actually wants to be a game tester, right? No one in the right mind wants to be a game tester. Everyone basically wants to be the next thing. Everyone wants to be whatever, right? So you're only a tester because you want to get your foot in to be a designer or a developer or an artist, yeah. No one wants to just be a tester. Actually, I kind of enjoy testing, but it's like, but I'd rather be, like an engineer that was testing. For example, I worked at this one company and I did all the QA scripting, so all the automatic QA testing I did. Right? That's what I can enjoy. That I can doing, but that's not really. When they were testing, that is not really a tester. A tester, what I'm referring to right now, is someone that just plays the game and tests for bugs, and so on, right? Writing all these like QA like scripts and all the engineering for that. That's just a normal engineering job, Writing all the automatic tests, right? The tester doesn't have to do that. That's what engineer does. So that job today is usually called QA engineering. It's a very weird title. It's basically an engineer that does testing, right? But it's a big difference between being a tester and a QA engineer. That basically is like a bachelor degree in between those. There's a difference, basically, right? Tester is something you can do with no experience. Yeah, tester can be done without any education, right? You know what I mean? Usually have it anyway, but you get a point. It's very, very, very low top and top, and they have basically no salary, right? But anyway, localizers then is the same thing, more or less, right? Just even less technical, right? You know your language. And localizers then are either people, like I said, like me or someone similar to me, that wants to get a foot in so you can get a better job, right? Or is someone that actually wants to do something else, right? Someone that is like a language. So a lot of my coworkers back in the days, they were localizers, they had like a degree in some kind of language, right? They had a degree in some kind of like, they wanted to be some interpreter or something, or translator, right? So they also don't want to work in the game industry. They actually don't even like games. They want to translate like politics or something. They want to translate books or whatever, right? So for them, it's also just like a stepping stone so they can have a better, so they can have like a better job later, right? So when it comes to both testing and localizers, the only people that are left there for years are the worst ones, right? Straight up, yeah. The only people that localizers for more than like a year or two are the least talented ones because they couldn't be promoted, you know what I mean? They could not get promoted. I mean, seriously, yeah. Tests and localizers I met in my life, almost all of them, they've done it for many years. They are extremely terrible because that's the only reason they keep doing it, right? Because no one promotes them. Yeah, no one gives them another chance. So either they're stuck doing it in the game and they don't want to, they can't get another job, right? Yeah, it's super bad. So no one wants to be it personally. But you can imagine this point is kind of similar for the writer and so on too, right? What happens then is that this also, of course, becomes more woke, right? Because, like I mentioned earlier, woke people tend to be less skilled, tend to be less talented, right? And also, of course, tends to be more hired because it's hired by other wokies. So a bunch of localizers, right, that are woke, we hire other woke localizers, and there are two lacking, they suck, right? They lack talent, so they won't get hired to a position, they're stuck as being localizers. That's why localizers especially is the place where you find the most probably woke people or left-leaning people, or also testers then, yeah. But testers tend to be men though. Testers tend to be much more, I think it's like a gender thing, but I think that the women in general doesn't enjoy testing as much because testing is very robotic. Testing is like you play the same stage over and over again. So most women hate being testers. Men are much better at being like QA testers. So that's probably where you won't find that much. And obviously women tend to like language more, right, and more talking and so on than men do. So you definitely find more women in localization and more men in QA testing. And they're both usually, like I said, left-leaning then, but especially of course then we have the most women and so on are going to be more woke, right? So But yeah, that's kind of the short story of that. But my video is basically more detail, half an hour about that. And now then, the last point, DI companies. Okay, so this is something that I think people are pushing massively, but it's not really a big deal. Okay, like, genuinely, these companies, the Black Rocks, the Soros, so the evil companies, you can't be named the Voldemorts, right? Aren't that big of a deal, honestly. I mean, yes, they do exist, but I hope to hear explain to you, right, why this is a very little actual issue, or whatever factor, rather, maybe, because all the other factors, right, that I brought up are all there before this, right? The developers are very left-leaning. The developers are very much bullied, misfits, social outcasts, and that makes them left-leaning, right? That developers usually tend to be less physically strong and so on, the nerds, they tend to be less merit-based because they are physically weak and so on. All this stuff is true, right? And then you have these companies giving the money. So yeah, in my experience, 20 years or whatever the shit, right? This is a very little factor to it, because they're already woke, right? That's kind of look at it. They're already woke leftists before the companies give them money to be woke. They're already woke, right? Yeah, like, it has a very little impact on it. But that being said, of course, these companies coming in saying that we want you to have like this like super woke main story, whatever, right? And if you do that, you get $5 million extra. Of course, it has an effect on it, but I think that it doesn't have that much actual push on it. No, because it's kind of like the game companies will just take any money they can to not get bankrupt, So not really, because I've seen things that people don't actually address the thing, but I've seen the exact opposite. I worked at a company that got acquired by Tencent, right? I worked at a company with testicles in, and it's the opposite. They're like, oh, you want to have our money? Here's $5 million, but none of that gay stuff. Like, I see the company has been the reverse, right? Where, yeah, the Chinese continue to say, no, you get money, but none of that stuff that we do not approve of in China, yeah. No. So I think this goes both ways, honestly, right? I think it goes both ways. You can't just ignore that and pretend that, oh, it's just only like woke, left-leaning, founding companies with founding money, bam, invested. No. It's also the same way on the direction, right? It's a little bit like the whole hate reviewing and hope reviewing, or whatever it's called, hate bombing, where you see people, that everyone, review bombs a game, right? I don't buy that much either, because every time someone reviews a game, it's basically also reviewed hyped, right, by people that are on the other side of the political aisle, and this goes back and forth between both sides, right? So I think that to some extent it's not really true, because it's a lot of investment companies that will force the other way, right? And I think it's more of this thing, right? Honestly, most of these investment companies aren't necessarily like woke or whatever. They're just really afraid of controversies. Yeah, you have to understand that most of these investment companies, they're just like, what is their current status quo, right? Oh, it's woke, left-leaning, Kamala Harris will win, so we have to pretend that we believe in that, right? That actually is the real reason why, honestly. So now when Trump has won, I think you will see way less of this thing. Absolutely, because these companies, I'm not saying like, oh, I know everything in BlackRock, but honestly, most companies, they're just trying not to be in trouble, right? They want to invest money, make money, and not have anyone talking about them. If anything that's very famous, or not famous then, so to speak, for these really, really big investment companies that have all this money, is they like being in secret, right? They like not being mentioned, yeah. They like no one talking about it. They just want to make the money in secret, have all the rich islands, right? Because they don't want to be like the celebrities. They don't want to know people knowing where they live, the Barbra Streisand effect. They want to know people that live in Madbury or Hawaii or whatever. They want to have their mansion somewhere hidden, and they don't want people to know that, oh, this guy is the best investor, this guy is the Bill Gates of this thing. No, they want to be rich billionaires in secret, right? And have a lot of power and control in secret. That's what they actually really care about, yeah, in a lot of ways. But mostly it's when they let alone, seriously. So when they make this like, oh, this BlackRock is DI, whatever, honestly, mostly it is because they don't want to, mess with whatever is the current status quo, right? And of course, for the last years, that's been very woke. Now we are a little bit, I think also past woke sense, past the woke peak, right, as people talk about. And then I said Trump is winning, so we see a lot of companies saying that we're going to be less woke now and so on. So I think we actually going to see these companies be less like that, because again, they're just trying to follow the flow, right? They basically just want to pretend to be in the flow. They don't really want to stir. They don't want to control the flow, right? And eventually, these companies too, they care about bottom line in the end, right? Making money. So they also can't like invest into games like Dragon Age and failure. That's what they failed to Mark Concord. Yeah, they can't do that. They're doing it currently, but you have to also think about. I said it in my previous video, Spider-Man yesterday. You have to think about it too, that this has been a thing for years, right? And this year has been like the worst Vogue year for game industry for so long time, right? There've been so many failed Vogue games this year, which is great. But I mean, do you think these like big investment companies have planned for that? Or maybe they have, but I mean, they haven't changed their plan yet, right? Or they maybe have changed it, but I mean, it takes them, it's kind of like a Titanic, right? It takes them a long time to stir, you know, it's very hard to swing the boat around, right? So I always think it's the least important point by far. Everything else, the whole environment, Silicon Valley being vocal, whatever, everyone being kind of like this social, you know, misfits and so on, is much more important. Tourism is much more important. And then this company that might invest into whatever they believe is a current progressive thing, right? They won't do that infinitely, but they can't do this thing. They have to go like this very slowly. It's very hard for them to just dump money in no direction, right? So I think it has the least amount of effect. And also, like I said, right, you have to imagine, you have to understand, I think, honestly, more than imagine, you have to understand that these companies that they get these like Vogue investment, or also tend to already be Vogue to begin with, right? I mean, one reason they even get the investment is because they agree with them, right? Well, even whatever current political PC thing is, right? So that's a point as well, right? You know. So yeah, I wanted to bring it up as the last bullet point, the DI companies. But like I said, I don't believe they have that much effect, because you already have all these other factors that is already happening. But sure, it is an effect still though, and sometimes it's certainly going to be an effect. For example, the company I worked for was going to go bankrupt if Tencent didn't get the money. And obviously then if Tencent can say, oh, you have to do this thing now, they have to listen to them 100%, right? So of course, big investment companies can alter a game's, you know, direction massively by saving a failing company and then forcing them in whatever direction they want, because they have to listen to them, you know, in that state, right? It's a difference between having like a silent investment partner and being saved from bankruptcy, right? So certainly they can, but in that case, then with Tencent, they went more right wing. Yeah, in that case, they went more right leaning, right? So, but still, I mean, of course, if you have enough money, you can always affect stuff, and especially then if you do it for a failing company. But I still think it's very weird, and I keep saying, it's more a combination of these people already being so vogue, because you got bullied, had no friends, and they are very, like, they're meek, so they get into that kind of system of thinking of this thing. But also, if we iterate here a little bit now, as earlier, it's also, like I said in my last video, keep going back to that, toxic positivity, right? They're so afraid of fighting with other people, and because you can't critique each other, they can't improve either. And if someone has like a really terrible, you know, game design idea or a really terrible character model, right, no one can tell them that. In my last video, I explained how I became kind of the mean manager, right? Because if you have like 5 managers and the other 4 are like, oh, this is the best thing ever, and I know that they're all just pandering to this guy's emotions, right? And I have to be honest, I have to be like, oh, this is the worst thing ever, because I have to kind of compensate for their incredible, you know, Vogue pandering. I have to pretend I hate it massively, even if I'm actually somewhat indifferent. I have to be like a super hater, because otherwise this guy won't understand that I'm telling him it's bad, right? Because he's been, you know, pandered so much. In Swedish call it björntjänst, right? Yeah, he's been ruined by the björntjänst. But anyway, I explained more than a video, right? But you get my point. There's a lot of those things together in these factors. But anyway, guys, like the video, subscribe. That's a conclusion here. Well, have a New Year's. Now I'm taking a shower with the party here, because I'm not one of those loser nerds. I'm not a nerd loser, so I'm going out at the bar. But seriously, I think it is something that I understand. And another part, this has been another video, but I'm gonna make a video one day explaining the difference between being a nerd and choosing being a nerd, right? I said it my whole life, but it's a big difference between people that are like nerd out of choice or not. It's a big difference actually. And usually the people that are nerds out of choice tends to also go to the parties, right? Because they tend to be really nerdy or whatever, but they could be good at sports or whatever, right? And then you have people that are nerds because they are terrible at everything, and they were terrible at football and terrible at hockey and whatever, basketball, and these became like gamers because they couldn't do anything else, right? It's a big difference in those two things, honestly. But anyways, you guys have a great day and a happy new year.